And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another round of the Alpha Touring Challenge Season 6, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And today marks round 8 of 13, as our drivers have made their way over to Germany for the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit. Known more formally as the Nürburgring GP-Strecke, this circuit, overshadowed by its wider Nordschleife Loop cousin, is a circuit that, whilst a little bit younger compared to a Nordschleife Loop, is not to be forgotten about. Given the fact it has played host to multiple international major series over the course of its history, spanning all the way from Formula 1 through to GT World Challenge, and indeed a host of regular endurance events around here spanning all the way up to 24 hours, this is a circuit which is going to see our drivers attack it ferociously over the course of a sprint race round. And as we get ready to go, of course, we do a little bit of housekeeping as always. Started off by pointing out the racing action you'll be seeing today is post-round, whereby the racing itself occurred as of early this week on Monday the 16th of January, but we're bringing it to you as if it were live on Friday the 20th of January for your viewing pleasure. This broadcast being brought to you live via two media platforms as well. Firstly on Twitch, you can go to TX141 on twitch.tv and tune in there. Alternatively, if you're more of a YouTube user, you can go to youtube.com and search for TX141TX, alternatively Paul Walsh. Now, who is TX141TX? Who is Paul Walsh? Well, that is I, your host and commentator. Allowed to introduce myself. My name is Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And as we get ready to go racing, let's take you through our schedule for tonight. Times in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or Universal Coordinated Time, UTC. Our schedule is as follows. In shortly, what will be 13 minutes time, we'll make it our way into our qualifying session. 15 minutes in duration. We'll see all 18 of our drivers in attendance today heading out onto the circuit. Byron knows that potentially have penalties where they're not allowed to qualify due to car changes, and I believe we do have a couple of those. But we'll see all of our drivers take to the circuit and look to put in their best possible laps in order to give themselves the opportunity to start as high up the grid as possible. At least for our first race of the day, there'll be freeze races, and after the qualifying session, we go immediately into the gridding process for sprint heat number 1, and that will be at 8 o'clock this evening. 15 minutes in duration, where our drivers will attack the circuit with no pit stops expected in any sprint races. Indeed, they'll be looking to iron out the kinks, iron out the rust, and look to bring home those major points. After that, they'll make their way back into the pit lane before returning to the grid for race number 2, our second sprint heat, approximately 20 past 8 this evening, and that'll be another 15-minute race, the same duration as sprint heat 1, albeit a slightly inverted grid at the very front, and that will mix things up. And then we'll be taking a slightly longer break of a couple of minutes before we return to the grid for the sprint feature at what will be 8:45, and there we'll see our drivers take to the circuit for 30 minutes of racing action, double the time duration, and therefore a greater test our drivers' ability to maintain a very high level of pace, but also keep in mind the need to preserve the tyres and manage themselves over the duration. And who will come away with the ultimate points come the end of the 3 races? Well, that's the question we're about to find out. But as our drivers are getting ready and underway, let's just give you a quick recap of the season so far and what still lies in wait over the course of the rounds remaining. And well, you can see there on our calendar, we're now over halfway down, having come away from the Red Bull Ring in Austria, in neighbouring Austria last time out, and that's back on the 9th of January there in our Alpha round, or our feature race round, and absolutely brilliant racing over the course of the Grand Prix loop of the circuit. And then we make our way to Germany for tonight. After tonight, we'll make our way over to the South American continent for the Sao Paulo Interlagos circuit in Brazil, and that will be in round number 9. And on the 23rd of January there, our drivers will be taken to a circuit that sees plenty of drama year in, year out when it comes to racing around there, whether it be in Brazilian stock car, Formula 1, or every other class in between. And elsewhere, it is a circuit which is absolutely venerable for its ability to create late championship drama and indeed sway the fortunes of many. After Interlagos, we'll then be making our way back to Europe for the final time this season, heading to Norway for the Rudskogen Motor Centre circuit, and that will also be our final sprint race round on the 30th of January there in round number 10. And the Rudskogen circuit, very heavily focused around track position. Qualifying is going to be absolutely critical in Norway, and who will be able to put in the ultimate one-lap pace and then convert it into a major haul of points over the 3 races. Then we'll have 2 Alpha rounds running from round 11 through to 12, starting with the Mid-Ohio circuit in the United States of America, of course, and that'll be on the 6th of February there, and then we'll be making our way to Road Atlanta on the 13th of February. Of course, the circuit we visited for our season finale back in season 5, but it's not going to be there for our finale this time round. Instead, it's been turned into our penultimate round there, and as we make our way away from the Road Atlanta circuit, we bring it all to a close down under in Australia at the Mount Panorama circuit, or more commonly known as Bathurst there, with our tribute to the Bathurst endurance races, and that'll be on the 20th of February, and more details about that in the special round highlighted big to come in due course. But as our drivers also get set for the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit tonight, they'll be thinking about the fact that they've had multiple rounds so far, and let's recollect all the rounds that we've gone through to date. We started off, of course, back on the 7th of November in 2022 with the Belle Isle circuit in Detroit in the state of Michigan in the United States of America. And there at Belle Isle, our traditional season opener, the street racing circuit like no other. And we did see sparks fly and plenty of battles up and down the field. Then we made our way across to the county of Monterey and particularly the state of California for the Laguna Seca Raceway circuit on the 14th of November. And there, despite the sand, despite the tightness of the circuit, we saw plenty of battles and overtakes fly high. And then we made our way over to Japan across the Pacific Ocean for the Fuji Speedway circuit and a double header in Japan on the 21st of November. We were a week's break to celebrate Thanksgiving before returning on the 12th of December there for our second sprint race round at the Suzuka Grand Prix circuit. And there, concluding our run in Japan, we made our way over to continental Europe for the Hungarian Grand Prix circuit in what was an alpha round on the 19th of December. And whilst the circuit was touted to lack overtaking, well, many of our drivers showed that you can overtake at the Hungaroring, and then they went into the Christmas break. Some absolutely high with an early Christmas present of major points in their championship, and others losing out considerably and looking to try and redeem themselves as a New Year's resolution as they made their way to 2023, with Donington Park then seeing host of us return in round number 6. And then last time out, of course, we made our way to Austria, back across the channel to the Austrian circuit at the Red Bull Ring, and that was on the 9th of January. But as for our circuit for today then, well, we are here at the Nürburgring GP-Strecke circuit, and you'll notice there that the layout we are running is known as the BES WEC layout, or the World Endurance Championship layout, whereby we'll have 16 corners at this circuit located near the city of Nürburg in Germany. And you can see from the circuit map provided us by simracingwiki.com, the key difference between this version of the circuit and the typical Grand Prix layout that you'll know and love through Formula 1 racing is that we are running the fast final chicane, VDOL chicane at turns 14 and 15. We're seeing our drivers there using the medium speed apexes rather than the low speed apexes, and therefore there's a little bit more gusto to the run through the corners, and therefore there's the greater change, of course, because it's not just about the battle on the brakes, it's about being bold into the corner if you're going to go down the inside or try and hold it around the outside. But to take you around a lap here from our circuit diagram, as our drivers make their way across the timeline down towards turn number 1 into the Yokohama S hairpin, they'll come heavy on the brakes in the downhill run and make their way into the Mercedes arena. Exiting out, they'll have to quickly bring the car over to the right before charging into left-hander at turn number 2, where they'll balance the throttle to avoid any potential understeer before making their way down into turn number 3. Another downhill braking zone, much like at turn number 1, but a shorter run, and there they need to get a very late apex if they want to make it to turn number 4 before going through the kink of 5 and down towards 6. Run away from the Mercedes arena then into turn 6. They'll head through the left into right sequence that concludes with the Ford curve at turn 7, and as they make their way down towards the Dunlop Kera hairpin at turn number 8, there we'll see the heavily cambered corner naturally create some overtaking opportunities for drivers who decide to go high and wide compared to those on the inside. Exiting out, there'll be a sprint up towards the Michael Schumacher S, of course named after the infamous Formula 1 driver from Germany, and as they make their way through 9 and 10 there, the fast chicane, they'll make their way into turn number 11, the left-hand kink, where they'll be on the brakes and dropping a couple of gears, before then balancing the throttle for the Bilstein curve at turn number 12, and it's the run down the back straight through the kink of 13, where they'll be flat out before heading into the medium speed version of VDOL, the WEC version of the chicane, and making their way up towards the hairpin at turn number 16 to do it all again in a lap that is highly technical, and whilst there are overtaking opportunities here, it really does come down to your ability as a driver to be able to carry as much speed from corner to corner and really now getting back on the power and return to full throttle as soon as possible, which of course is the ultimate challenge in the touring car racing class car, simply because these cars are front engine, front wheel drive, and that means the front wheels do everything. They do turning and power deployment, and therefore if you get the power down too soon, you end up understeering as you're trying to clear the corner. And coming on to our rules, of course, to give you a reminder of what our sprint race round rules are and our overall rules are for this series. In terms of setup, car fuel loads have been restricted to 45% for this round. Indeed, they've been restricted to that for the majority of rounds. And in the sprint races, there are no pit stops expected, as we mentioned earlier. Grid for race number 2 shall be a top 4 reverse of race 1's results. To put that in simple English, that means that your winner in race number 1 will start in P4 on the grid for race number 2. Conversely, the 4th place finisher in race number 1 starts on pole for race number 2. And now, of course, from 5th all the way downwards, they line up as they finished in race number 1. In race number 3, we continue the trend with a top 8 inversion there, whereby we'll be seeing P1 through to P8 being inverted on the grid for race number 3. So the winner of race 2 will end up being 8th place on the grid for race 3, going all the way down to 8th place, where 8th place in race number 2 will be starting on pole. And then from 9th downwards, of course, then we'll see our drivers line up as they finished in race number 2. Now, drivers shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 9 or more instant points. They'll be disqualified from a given race if they accumulate 13 or more instant points. And the following bonus points are available. 1 point for pole position. That is overall pole position, of course, and not class pole position, what with us having our Alpha and Delta classes here. 1 point for fastest lap over all of the races. So the fastest lap come the end of the 3 races today. 1 point for the Sublime Finesse Award, which is the fewest instance of a driver picks up over the course of the entire round. 1 point for leading leading a lap in a given race, so long as the driver leads a lap at some point today, where it's been race 1, 2 or 3, they'll get that bonus point, and 1 point from the Naked Aggression Award, which is the most overtakes made by a driver in the course of the round, so over the 3 races combined. But that's enough rules, regulation, everything in between. I know you're all here for. You're here for the racing, and well, let's return to the live pictures here of our drivers as they get ready to go, and we clear the schedule off screen, and we see here Kurt Smith, the Not Last Motorsports driver, making his way through turn number 16 at the moment and getting himself set up to go on to another practice lap here with just under 5 minutes to go. And Kurt Smith, of course, now in P2 in the Delta Class Championship, albeit 54 points off of Championship leader Justin Rhodes. But the Not Last Motorsport driver has really had to work hard to get himself into that P2 position, finally finding a way to get ahead of Eric Statzer. But he's also got to be aware of the fact that whilst the stout Statzer will be looking to try and make a return challenge for that P2 in class, on top of that, they do have Jacob Wally, who is gradually closed up and continuing to make ground. And whilst Wally is in the pits at the moment, well, I can tell you that Justin Rhodes is out there, and the Breakfast for Dinner driver continuing to deliver those performances round after round and really trying to lead the way in the Delta class. He has his speed bumps, much like most drivers have had speed bumps in the Delta class, but Rhodes just seems to have that ultimate pace and nobody quite able to catch him at this time. But then again, looking at those practice times at the moment, you can imagine if those are indicative of qualifying, Kurt Smith may be able to prove us wrong there and put half a tenth over his rival at least, if not a little bit more. But meanwhile, in the Alpha class, we look to Wojciech Świrydowicz as he makes his way through turn number 13, and we're in quite a foggy day today at the German circuit. Indeed, we've got quite a bit of low fog hanging over the circuit, and will mean that the cars are a little bit obscured, and that's only going to add to the mystery for our drivers in terms of those braking zones, particularly the run into turn number 1 on the open lap of a given race. But as we see here, the Polish driver making his way through the final corner. Championship leader at the moment, with drop scores taken into effect, of course, for this series having multiple drop scores to its tallies, and as he makes his way down towards turn number 1, only a slender advantage, to be fair, of 17 points over Micah Hendricks. Well, you can imagine at Force Świrydowicz, after digging in so deep and holding off Logan McKinsey to the finish line at the Red Bull Ring last time out, he'll be hoping he can perhaps break away a little bit more succinctly this time and give himself a little bit of respite. But if we know one thing about the Alpha Touring Challenge, is nobody gets it for free, and when the competition is this close, as we have seen so far in Season 6, everybody has to be on their top form, and if you're not in your top form, well, it's going to go one of 2 ways. Either you lose out massively because you drop a long way down the order, or you're going to make a mistake at some point and it's going to cost you dearly in return, because that is how close the competition is at the very top of the field and also in the Delta class. Now, a reminder, of course, to the uninitiated, when we talk about Alphas and Deltas, our Alphas are represented by blue stripes on the timing tower there, and they represent our Pro class. Meanwhile, our Deltas are represented by the purple-pink stripe, and they represent our Pro Am class, but they shouldn't be thought of as lesser drivers, of course, because everybody is competing in the same championship points pool. There are not specific points for the Deltas versus the Alphas, and that means, for example, if Eric Statzer was to take the win today in what is the Delta class, but he finishes P3 on the grid overall in a given race, well, then he'd be awarded the championship points for P3 overall, not for the win in the Delta class, and that applies to everybody on the grid, and therefore that incentivises the Deltas to fight the Alphas and really try to gain that pace on the Alphas, and at the same time that means the Alphas cannot expect an easy ride and just simply being able to cruise on past the Deltas. There is that reason to fight, and we love to see it when those Deltas really dig their teeth in and make a point to the Alphas. Look, I'm not just here to make up the numbers, there's a bit of contact there between the Beerbuzz Energy drivers and John Lauzon being given quite the tap to the grass down on the inside of turn number 12 at Bilstein, but as we see him return to the circuit very gradually, and meanwhile Conor Achitella there making his way on down towards turn number 6. We say hello to you in a number of you in the chat, in the YouTube chat in particular there, and we can see what is there, Daniel Sedeno for what is Haas-Holz Motorsports. We're cheering on, I believe, Haas-Holz Motorsports, the team named after Gunther Steiner, of course, and the Haas Motorsports team. And well, we can't exactly give you the reasons why they're called Haas-Holz, or you can probably guess what that's in reference to, but that'd be a little bit not safe for work. It may get taken off of air, so we're not going to quite explain that. But and we also have there Matthew Shepka, of course, for Talk Steer Racing tuning in, and we also, I do believe, have a couple other individuals there in the chat, including Charisma. Good evening to you. And also, well, I think that's everybody so far, but if you are tuning in, don't be shy, feel free to say hi, let us know how you're doing on this fine Friday, and also let us know who you're cheering on, as we have just under a minute to go before we head into qualifying. And of course, a number of our drivers participate in this race tuning in right now, and we do ask, of course, if you're tuning in as a driver who raced in this round of the series, do not give away any potential spoilers or whatnot for those guys and girls tuning in at home who do not know what happens. And I can assure you, as your host and commentator. I do not know what happens myself. I've made a very keen point of avoiding any potential spoilers, and that means it's as close as possible to Raw for me, and therefore I'll bring you as close as possible to that live experience that you all crave and deserve. But as we see Mark Darnell making his way down for turn number 6, we will be now cutting away for a brief moment, so that way we can accelerate into qualifying and make sure that the qualifying times do not appear straight away. Of course, that's just a little bit of safety feature there to avoid any potential spoilers. So we will be right back, ladies and gentlemen, in less than a minute. And just like that, we return, ladies and gentlemen, for qualifying here as our drivers get set to go out on the circuit. And the fog has raised a little bit, although we still do have quite a bit of low fog over the circuit for 15 minutes. And who will come out on top by the end of it? Well, let's find out. And we should point out that we do have a couple of drivers who will not be permitted to put in qualifying laps. And I do believe at the moment that includes Micah Hendricks and also Mark Darnell. Although I'm not 100% sure on Darnell at the moment, but I believe Hendricks has made the swap to the Honda Civic Type R. And just to explain that, of course, our drivers are permitted one car swap over the course of the season within a given range of rounds, but if they make an additional car swap after that, they do have to forfeit qualifying in the next round, and that's essentially their punishment there. And of course, it means they have to work much harder if they want to try and pick up some major points when they head to the end of the round, whether it be an Alpha or 30th sprint race round. But as we do see Mark Darnell there clarifying in the YouTube chat, and say hello to him with regards to what is making the car swap, their third car swap for Mark, and we'll definitely switching things around there, and could a little bit of shopping on the cars potentially work your way. We'll have to wait and see. And we can see a number of you saying there about the fact that Wojciech Świrydowicz has switched from the Audi RS3 to the Hyundai Elantra. He's used his car swap for this round. It's his first car swap of the season. Of course, we know him more for running in the Audi RS3 while the lone driver's running in the German machinery, but deciding to switch to the South Korean machinery of the Elantra N that's produced by Hyundai. And as he makes his way on through the Schumacher S, well, of course, with the pace he's been showing all season, will he feel as though he's now gone for the one-lap pace car, albeit the car that's a bit more sensitive on its tyres and really does pick up tyre degradation much more easily on a hot circuit compared to the other cars available in this TCR series? Well, will it work out for him, or will it be a mistake to make the swap? We will see as he goes into this qualifying session. Everybody weaving at the moment to try and get some tyre temperature up, and it does seem as though it's a little bit cooler than perhaps they were anticipating. And to give you an idea of that weather, if we can bring it up on the right hand side there, albeit slightly obscured by the opacity of the logo behind, but you can see a track temperature of 24 degrees centigrade and an ambient at 26 degrees centigrade. So it's actually quite warm here, to be fair, but at the moment that track temperature not picking up enough for our drivers to feel overly comfortable perhaps, and really having to try and get that tyre temperature on down as we see Świrydowicz making his way onto his first flying lap. But of course, as they turn those laps, we will see that tyre temperature, of course, increase, and also that track temperature really start to build. And if it starts to get in excess of approximately 35 to 40 degrees centigrade, that's when the Elantra really does start to feel the pain with regards to those front tyres wearing down quite aggressively. But meanwhile, as we see Eric Stats here taking his time, gradually heading up the back straight and towards the Vidal chicane, just getting himself set little by little, making his way on up towards Vidal now. Well, Stats have decided to go for a lot of space on circuit and really give himself the opportunity to put in a clear air lap. And what should we expect here with regard to the Nürburgring circuit? Well, the thing about this circuit is it is a circuit where having a bit of a distant toe may aid you in these touring car racing class cars, because they are on paper a little bit slower compared to what typically races around here. And when I say typically, of course, touring car racing on the European continent does visit this circuit year in, year out, but it doesn't normally use the full Grand Prix circuit. It normally uses a slightly redacted version of the circuit, whereby as our drivers make their way beyond the Mercedes arena, they enter quite an early hairpin and come back on themselves. But they have also used the Grand Prix circuit over the years. But the key thing there is we get a distant camera shot of Eric Stanton. Now look to a closer camera shot of Daniel Sedino as he makes his way through turn number 6 and into 7. The key thing is because these cars are a little bit slower, therefore they can afford to pick up the toe and not feel as much an effect of that dirty air off of the car in front. However, you may feel it is in the Mercedes arena, where you've got those low speed corners and heavy braking zones, and carrying an extra mile an hour or two because of that dirty air and the front end not wanting to turn in as much as you'd like it to, may just prove to be undoing over the course of laps. So I think the toe will be really important as our drivers come out to the Dunlop Dunlop Courier hairpin, much like what Sedano has just done, and they make the way out towards the Schumacher S, and that's where the lap time will really start to come on in and be positively bumped by it. But meanwhile, you can imagine if they pick up that toe early on in the lap, they may just feel some negative effects from it. But as we look to Matt Shepke, and we do have quite a traffic jam building at the moment in the run up towards Vidal here as they come on through. I think some tries to decide to abort their laps given the difficulties as they make the way in towards turns 14 and 15. And when we say difficulties, some drivers just not too pleased with the way the lap's gone. Perhaps an invalidation for cutting some track limits as well. But as they roll the way on through turn number 16, Shepke coming on through. So we're directly across his line. Sets the opening time of the session of a 2:06.764. Got quite a few times there, almost 2 seconds, if not more, of. But as we see Shepke crossing the line there, well, Świrydowicz really setting things on fire straight out the gate with that 2:06.74, 764, we should say. Meanwhile, we see Shepke there putting himself P5 and Jacob Wally so far putting himself in P4, albeit we've got a lot of time to go, and also we do need to wait to see where all of our Delta drivers put their lap times on that board for their first run round. But of course, one of those drivers we're really keen to see how he gets on. Indeed, all of our drivers, but he has been in the spotlight for the last couple of rounds, having made his debut quite late on in the season, but has been flying high in the Delta class, has been showing the pace to compete against Eric Statzer and also what is Kurt Smith, and also started to inch closer and closer towards the pace of championship leader Justin Rhodes. But we are waiting to see whether Wally's able to take it one step further and finally put the nail in the coffin with regards to making that statement of, I have a little bit more pace than you, in terms of that battle with Justin Rhodes over the course of a single round. He's come very close. He's actually matched Rhodes in the last sprint race round. He was able to match Rhodes on points accrued, and that was at Donington, albeit the two of them then were nose to tail for a bit of the race, but we never really got to see it explode onto our screens like we'd want it to. But will today be the day? That'll be the question for all of us, of course, tuned in. I think for Jacob Wally right now, going into every one of these rounds, wanted to go faster and faster and deliver more and more as he makes his way up towards turn number 13. But as he heads his way towards 30, the first he has to go through turns 11 and 12 as he heads on through into the Bilstein curve at 12 now, and tucked in behind there while the other breakfast for dinner cars, he makes way on through, and I believe he's also run the breakfast for dinner livery on the car and potentially a team swap there, and we will just have to double check with regards to that. But as he makes his way on around, indeed he has joined what is their breakfast for dinner, and I believe we will just get that updated on our broadcasting information for you. It was previously listed as a privateer, but now part of the breakfast for dinner outfit. And as we do update our overlay there, gets it slightly wrong, coming on through Vidal and up towards 16, just dipping the rear left tyre onto the grass as he made his way out. But that goes to show you he's really pushing it hard right now as he makes his way across the timeline. And well, now we head towards the second half of the session shortly. A 2:08.915 is what he's improved to, but Świrydowicz right now just absolutely nailing it lap after lap, and a gap of almost 2 seconds already. Well, my goodness, if that is a statement that car swap is working out, I think he's definitely going further than a statement right now, because to be 1.8 seconds faster than the next closest driver on the field, we are looking at somebody here who I think is really realising destiny in that Elantra as he makes his way through 5 and down towards 6. But as he does, and charge on down very shortly, we will ride on board for a reference lap, and who better to ride on board with than Eric Statzer as he makes his way across the timeline, and we jump inside the Honda Civic Type R driver's car. He's making his way across the timeline, improves to a 2:09.211, but I think he'll feel as though there's a bit more out there given at the relative pace of his peers. As he heads into turn 1, braking there about 110 metres just before the turn 1 at 100 metre board, and rolling his way through the apex, dropping down of course, and now making his way into the Mercedes arena over to the right hand side before lifting off the throttle here, holding second gear and making his way out to 2 and down towards 3. Now downhill braking zone here brings the car in tight to the apex, which you can do in these front engine front wheel drive touring cars. You can be very aggressive on the brake as he comes out of 3 over to left hand side before turning in for a late apex at 4. Now's the run out of there on the power through the kink of 5 and heading down towards 6 now, and the mood of the lap is going to change into a bit more open cornering from this point onwards. Trailing down to 3rd gear there into turn number 6, we'll bring the car over to left for turn 7, onto the brakes and dropping down to 2nd gear as he powers on out and makes his way down towards the Dunlop Courier hairpin. Now it's a long charge here, a relatively long one compared to some of the straights in the circuit as he makes one in, looks to his left hand side for his brake marker. You see the start of the entry curve there, and using that as his marker as he comes all the way down to 2nd gear, hits the apex, powers on out, uses the U-shape approach there to the corner. Some drivers try to use a V-shape approach by comparison, and either line works as he makes his way into the Schumacher S here, going to be absolutely flat out all the way through, making sure just to keep the car balanced to avoid the understeer sending into the gravel. Now heading up towards turn number 11 and looking to his right for his brake marker. The 100-metre board braking at 110 metres, coming down the third, clattering over the apex curve, bringing the car back to the left-hand side here for Bilstein. And as he makes his way through, more of a lift off the throttle and a dab of the brake here, just to settle the car and get it to rotate on that front end. As he now powers on down towards Vidal chicane, now completely flat out through 13 here, brings the car on through and then brings the car gradually over to the right hand side as he lets the natural run of the road steer the car, and as he makes his way up the hill here, braking as late as possible, and in fact braking out 54, drops to fourth gear, carries the speed on through, very nicely done, as he now makes his way into turn 16 again, really taking an aggressive line into the final hairpin corner as he makes his way now, powers out there, not quite carrying as much speed as perhaps he would have liked to there, a bit of hesitancy on the throttle, but still minuscule in terms of the criticism. And as he crosses the line, what's it going to be? It's a 209.250, not quite able to improve there, 400ths off of his previous best, but still holding on to P13 at the moment, overall P4 in the Delta class. As meanwhile, whilst we're riding on board with Eric Statzer there, the Honda Lancia driver of Justin Rhodes has retaken up pole position in the Delta class, P7 overall by a margin of what is there, just shy of 2/10 over rival Jacob Wally, as right now these two continue to exchange lap time. We've still got 5 minutes to go in this qualifying session, and with time still to tick on, well, can we see any late surprises potentially coming on the radar? Well, the gap between our fastest man on circuit, Świrydowicz, has been brought down to 1 second from 2 seconds, and that's because of this man here, Logan McKenzie. And of course, McKenzie last time out of the Red Bull Ring was the driver who took Świrydowicz all the way to the checkered flag in terms of keeping the pressure on, but in his own words, come the end of the race, to get so close to the back of Świrydowicz was taking so much effort, and even in the tow, he only could find the advantage when he was within 3/10 on the straight. And well, of course, it was Audi versus Lancia, whereas now they're both in equal machinery. But of course, this is an open setup series. There are no fixed setups in play. Our drivers bring setups of their choosing from round to round, and can McKenzie find a way to set himself up for success? That'll be the challenge. But he's not going to be setting himself up for success right now, as he makes way out the final corner and finds a bit of a traffic jam of cars, tucks into the toe there of Shepka, but I think both of them lifting off a little bit. And Shepka improves to a 2.8.119. Meanwhile, McKenzie does not improve, and as they make the way on down, we can see James Carr has jumped up to P2. Now an advantage of what is there, 3/10 as Shepka gets it wrong. The car drifts, and McKenzie there turns on through and finds the Torque racing car barreling on across the apex, and both drivers there with wounds to the cars, and I think both of them will be deciding to head back to the pits. But meanwhile, we do see here Connor Achitella making his way across the line, and as he does, a 208.067. Jerome Bajulas improves to P4, then a 207.7 flat, and as they make the way on around, time is now starting to run out here. Everybody looking to do everything they can to try and improve, but Achitella really now having to find a bit of extra time out of circuit, given the fact that you can see on the timing tower there, we do have quite a gap emerging from what is the top 3 to P4 downwards, but then Bajulas in P4 through to Shepka there in P8. In fact, David Barron P9. Well, that run of 6 drivers only separated by a margin of half a second. Achitella right in the midst of them in P7, and can he find a little bit more time in order to get himself up there onto potentially the second row of the grid, if not the third row? Well, time is coming on down, and he's not got long left to try and find those key points on the lap where he needs to improve. But as he comes roaring on down the hill, we do look from him to Wiley Cox here, who makes his way through turn number 2 and down towards 3, and rolling his way into the latter half of the Mercedes arena in the number 42 Honda Civic Type R, currently our lowest placed driver in this qualifying session to set a lap. And of course, we have 2 drivers that have not set laps due to the fact they're not permitted to, as they have made car swaps more than 1 car swap this season. And just to reiterate, that is Mark Darnell in the Delta class and Micah Hendricks in the Alpha class. But as they come on through right now, as we look to Wiley Cox, well, keeping it nice and succinct and sweet as he makes his way up towards the Dunlop hairpin at turn number 8. But coming on through there, we now look to our current provisional pole sitter. Does not improve this time and just misses out, improving there by 400. But meanwhile, Francois Schink does improve to P4 again, a 207.657. But really right now, having to stake his claim to that second row on the grid, the second spot of the second row, with Jerome Bajulas there only off him by half a tenth, if that. And then John Low's on a whole 3/10 back. So we are starting to see Schink and Bajulas breaking away in terms of these qualifying times. And Schink decides to pull over there. He's done done and dusted for his qualifying session. And remember, there is no overtime in these sprint qualifying sessions. It is purely when that 15 minutes concludes, all of our drivers will be told to go back to the pits immediately, and any laps they're on will be immediately invalidated. So time is running out, and well, with 2 minutes a lap, or just over 2 minutes a lap, a lot of drivers now will need to come to the end of their current laps, otherwise they're not going to be counted. But as he makes his way through the right hand there of turn number 5, well, turn number 4 and down towards 5, 6 very shortly. Will Smith doing everything right as he comes on down into left-hander. And in fact, we do get a bit of clarification there from John Lauzon in the YouTube chat, saying that he has used an additional car swap. So in fact, he's not allowed to actually set qualifying times there. And of course, that's the limitation of an iRacing replay file. We can't quite tell which laps are valid and which are not, but we're going to presume all laps are valid until we're told otherwise. We go to the grid. So Lauzon will be starting further down the order. He'll be starting towards the back of the order in what will be there either on the 9th row or the bottom end of the 8th row, given the fact he has made the car swap there to what looks to be the Hyundai Elantra, of course, the car that did him so well in season 5. And we'll bring it on through here, Vito, and now heading towards the line. Most of our drivers now starting to consider making the way into the pits, or will not be getting to the very end as they make the way on around. And as a result, these lap times are going to stand as Lauzon comes on through there. We will take a time, but it'll be an invalid time with that to a 7.789. But Lauzon definitely showing a good amount of pace. But it's Świrydowicz who comes on through here. 3 seconds to go. He'll be your overall and alpha pole sitter, and Kurt Smith will be your delta pole sitter there, being able to take the throne off his peers. So with qualifying complete, we now head to the grid, and this is how they line up for sprint heat number 1. Wojciech Świrydowicz takes pole position there, the privateer of a 206.259. That lap does stand by a margin of 7.5 tenths over James Carr when it's all said and done for breakfast for dinner. He starts P2. Logan McKenzie and Franz Wojcik share the second row with the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver out-qualifying the Beaver Buzz Energy driver by 3 tenths. And it's Jerome Bajulas who starts P5 with Justin Rhodes there at P6 for breakfast for dinner in a good qualifying session from him. And in fact, we get that update there to say he was on pole with Connor Achitella and Matt Shepka there P7, P8 on the full throw. The Yellow Flag Motorsports driver going toe-to-toe with the Talkative Racing driver into turn 1, we anticipate. And then it's David Bauer and Kurt Smith who complete the top 10 there on the 5th row, with the breakfast for dinner driver not quite having the qualifying pace compared to the previous round, but still being joined by Not Last Motorsports' Kurt Smith, who will be very pleased having qualified second in class. We then have Eric Statson and Jacob Wally, the 2 deltas there, line up on the 6th row, the privateer ahead of the breakfast for dinner driver, of course recently joining the team as this round. And then we can see on row number 7 is Daniel Sedena from Hassel's Motorsports, joined by Wiley Cox there, the privateer. And then we will have on the 8th row Kirk Lane, the privateer, joined by Micah Hendricks from Hassel's Motorsports. And then it will be Mark Darnell and John Lauzon line up on the final row of the grid. And of course, Micah Hendricks, Mark Darnell and John Lauzon are not permitted to set qualifying times, and therefore, because of those car swaps, they're going to need to prove that they made the right call in switching cars today. But will it work out in race number 1 of our 3 races here? We have a 15-minute race, of course, and as our drivers get set to go, we're only waiting on one more driver to take to the grid. You can see the grid slot there behind Świrydowicz from the perspective of our camera, and that is, of course, James Carr, who we are waiting to take to the grid. Less than 20 seconds now to go before we get the light, and there he is. He's lined up, all 18 drivers on the grid, and now we'll wait the lights. Lights out and away we go for race at number 1 here at the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit as Wojciech Świrydowicz looks to defend in the run down towards turn number 1. He gets a good start. James Carr just behind as they head on to the anchors. Cold brakes, of course, and cold tyres as well. As you can see there, Jerome Bajulas battling with Franz Wojcik, the 2 Beaver Buzz Energy drivers, as they make the way out to the hairpin and make the way up the hill to the Mercedes Arena. Everybody makes their way safely on through. Matt Shepka there in a bit of a barricade versus what is going to turn Logan McKenzie. And meanwhile, Eric Statson there in contact with multiple drivers. I think there was some contact with Bauer as he comes onto the brakes and literally getting swarmed left, right and centre as they make the way through turn number 3. And I think there's damage on the car, and that may have put him into retirement in terms of from this race. But as they make the way out to turn 4 and down towards 6, it's definitely been a tumultuous start, and Eric Statson losing out massively with that contact. I think he may have to come into the pits to repair work. John Lauzon, meanwhile, having already made 6th place at the start, he's got clear of the majority of the Delta class already, up into P12 overall for the back of the grid. But as he makes his way down, we look to Franz Wojcik here, who's under pressure, and Connor Achitella as the 2 of them make the way down into the Dunlop Kara hairpin. On the brakes they go. And meanwhile, Logan McKenzie there, siphoning up the inside of what is Justin Rhodes, your Delta leader right now under pressure from the Yellow Flag Motorsports Alpha driver as they head on up the hill and in towards the Schumacher S, but neither driver wants to give way here, and Rhodes really wanted to try and get some big points in this race, but McKenzie says, I'm going around the outside to inside, and there Rhodes obliges as they make the way out of the chicane and now up towards turn number 11. But heading on to the brakes here, will Rhodes try and come on back? No, he will not, he'll stay behind there. I think playing it smart, knowing as meanwhile, we have to interrupt that for us. Colin Chitella decides to go very wide and deep into the runoff space there at turn number 11. Thankfully, there's no barriers there for a long while, but still Achitella losing multiple places with the slowdown, of course, at the time he would have theoretically gained if he carried on full throttle in the run to the next corner. But the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver there respecting the black flags being waved to him and now push it on here, but he's got a whole pack of drivers behind him, including Shepka, Bauer, Hendricks and Kurt Smith as they make the way into turn number 14. On the brakes they go, and Hendricks comes in too hot there on the inside and just about makes contact with Achitella, and it could have gone so differently if Achitella had not been there at the time. Hendricks went all in on the brakes, but it wasn't to be as I tried to make the way through turn number 16, and meanwhile a bit of contact there. Darnell versus Wiley Cox, they make the way out to turn number 16. I think Darnell there having to go a bit slowly with a little bit of damage to the car, just a little bit of an interruption of rhythm as they make the way onto lap number 2 here under race conditions in the first race of the day. And as they roll down right now, Darnell will be looking to come on back versus Cox a bit later on, as meanwhile up the inside there we've got one driver coming on through, and I believe, well, I think there was a little bit of glitch with our time towel there. I think it was David Bauer coming on through it versus Darnell as they make the way on through turn number 2. But as they roll the way down and up towards 3 right now, Darnell falling back still a little bit further more as they make the way through the latter half of the Mercedes arena. Meanwhile, up front, we can see here race leader Wojciech Świrydowicz, having started on pole, continues to try and charge away as he flies on through turn number 7 right now with a gap advantage there of 8.5 tenths. But as he heads down towards the hairpin, that gap not open up perhaps as dramatically as we would have expected, given the fact there that he is being kept honest by James Carr in P2, and then Jerome Pageau's a bit further back, 2 seconds off the leaders as they make the way through the turning point of the lap, where they start to make the way back towards the start finish. But as they head on through and up the hill they rise. Well, we look a bit back here too at Francois Schink, who's fallen a bit further towards what is the rear of Justin Rhodes, as meanwhile behind, well, Jacob Wally there battling side by side with Kurt Lane as they make the way up the hill. In fact, that is John Lauzon. We have to correct ourselves there. Wally right now fighting hard with the Alpha drivers. They make the way on up towards turn number 11. Onto the brakes they'll shortly go, and the breakfast for dinner driver here, well, I'm not sure what he's had for breakfast, but right now he's definitely wanted a big point score for his dinner as they make the way through 11 into 12, because he is really fired up here and putting the pressure on John Lauzon. Now Lauzon, to be fair, has come on through the field from the back as Wally there goes wide coming out of Bilstein corner. Meanwhile, a bit further back, David Bauer here, another breakfast dinner driver, trying to go on the offensive versus Kurt Lane as they make the way through 13. Wiley Cox went off track in a spin at turn number 11 from what we're hearing, and he has dropped all the way down to P16 as a result. But Bauer here, looking up the inside of Lane, takes it on through and takes the position with him as they make the way out of Vito and on towards the next lap shortly. But meanwhile, Darnell there up the inside of Lane, capitalising on Lane backing out in the run through Vito, and Darnell there coming on back versus his rivals. They make the way towards turn number 1. Of course, this is important for the pair of them because, as I understand it and recall, neither driver has actually picked up a podium in the Delta class this year so far, and they're both battling for P3 in class right now. As they head on down, it's going to be Darnell on the outside, Lane on the inside. Lane there going all in. He will have the advantage, of course, on the brakes, and the Honda has been a bit of contact there from what is Kurt Smith behind, who comes in very hot on the brakes and makes the tap on the rear, albeit I think the nose will be crunched a little bit on Kurt Smith's car as they make the way through turn number 2, and Darnell definitely unsettled by that as it's the exchange of the Hyundai Elantras, and now Smith ahead as Darnell tucks in behind for the time as they make the way through 3 and into 4 here, but definitely not the way they wanted it to go, as now Kurt Smith looking to try and come back through the field after what was a relatively difficult start to his race, having dropped 3 places off the comparison of his starting position. As they make the way into turn number 6 and into 7 here, rolling the way on through, and now down towards the hairpin they'll go. Smith looking to try and continue on his way as they make the way in towards the hairpin, and the number 3 driver here in the tow, the Honda. Of course, the Honda lacking one key thing compared to the Elantra, and that is top end speed and also straight line acceleration. The Honda does well in 2nd, 3rd and 4th gear, but as soon as it starts to make its way halfway through 4th, that's where the Elantra really shows the difference in terms of the amount of pace that we put down. But Smith they're going a little bit wide, and now to regain his composure as he makes his way into the Schumacher S. Now coming on through here, of course, he'll have a nice long run after the Bilstein curve at turn number 12 to really put the pressure on Lane, but Lane will do everything he can with the stronger brakes of the Honda to keep Smith at bay as they head on for 11, but he goes a bit deep there, Lane, and that's not going to give Smith the opportunity. What it will do is setting up a lovely opportunity with a cutback here coming out of Bilstein, but they're on the brakes into 12. The car starting to snap on braking slightly with the rear brake bias and therefore losing quite a bit of momentum as they make the way through turn number 13 and up towards Vidal they go, and Smith just not able to get close enough at the moment to really put that pressure on. He is close, but he's not close enough to get alongside, and that's the key thing at Vidal. You need to be fully alongside to really contest the move, but he looks the inside there, very late on the brakes, and we're going all in and up the inside of Kirk Lane, and as they make the way down towards turn number 1, which is going to be close between the two of them, and who will be able to come on through as the leader of this pair in the battle for P3 in the Delta class, P11 overall, as they head on down here. Lane on the outside, Smith on the inside, and as the camera turns round, they both go for it, and Lane, to be fair, trying to outbrake Smith as much as possible, but in the end Smith gets it done on that inside line and makes sure that Kirk Lane cannot hold the outside to inside run into turn number 2, but a lovely pass there from Smith, and to be fair to Kirk Lane, definitely giving it everything he knows the Honda's got, as the Team Blair Pope privateer now tries to hold off Mark Darnell, who's got close as a result of their battling. But as they make the way through turn number 4 here and exit the arena once again, we do look a bit further up the road to Jerome Bajulaz, who is battling with Logan McKenzie, and of course McKenzie and Bajulaz, no strangers to battling one another earlier on in the season, and right now nose to tail as they make the way down into the Donald Kerr hairpin. But as they come out of turn number 8, we ride on board the gearbox here. Bajulaz on the power nice and early, and to be fair, McKenzie doing the same, and notice how McKenzie really went for a V-shaped approach to turn number 8, knowing he needs to run up the hill here in the equality of the two Hyundai drivers in terms of their top end speed, and it's all about getting that better run to the next corner on the long straight section through the Schumacher S up towards turn number 11. But as they make the way through the left-hander 11, not able to find his way on through, and Bajulaz now starting to go a little bit defensive, and you'll see Justin Rhodes there just in the rear of the picture, 1.5 seconds back as your Delta leader P5 overall, creeping closer and closer as they make the way up towards Vidal. Now in the tow here, McKenzie will start to pick up a little bit of speed, but this will be a sign of how much rear wing he's running in terms of how rapidly he gains. Gets close here, but Bajulaz puts the car in the middle of the road. You can see a flash of headlights there from McKenzie to say to Bajulaz, look, I'm not fighting you to this corner, return to racing line, otherwise you'll cost us both time. Bajulaz there almost returns fully to his racing line, and McKenzie definitely wants the fact that they've got roads, and more importantly for McKenzie perhaps, Francois Schink is in P6 and only 7 tenths off the back of roads as they make their way down towards the next corner. But as they charge their way on down here, continues to flash his lights, McKenzie, and I wonder if there's a bit more to go going on there. Perhaps he's also trying to distract his rival as they head into the braking zone, but Bajulaz showing no signs of being distracted right now, nailing his apexes left, right and centre, but different lines there as Bajulaz carries a lot of speed for apex. Meanwhile, McKenzie brakes early and brings the car out and back on the power. Difference of lines, but no change in position as they make the way down towards turn number 3. But as they come down into the braking zone, you can definitely see, I think McKenzie feels as though he's got just a little bit more pace over the entirety of the lap, and he's making it felt, particularly in these heavy braking zones, where he's just able to close up and bring a lot more speed to bear. But of course then he has to back the car off for the simple reason he doesn't want to make contact to the back of Bajulaz's car, because whilst we don't mind a few bumps or scrapes directly going into the back of your rival, well, it will be frowned upon of course by the post-round stewards. But as we look to from them to Matt Shepka here, Shepka chasing after John Lauzon, who has recently found his way past Shepka, coming out of the Mercedes arena in the battle for P7 here overall, P6 in the Alphas as they head on down towards the braking zone for turn number 8. But you can see already how the Elantra just able to start putting a couple of yards on the Honda in terms of that straight line speed, and while Shepka is in the tow then he's got it all on the brakes. That's all where the Honda is concentrated around, in the corners and the braking ability. But it's these runs, these long runs on throttle, which is where the Elantra just opens up the door significantly, and we haven't got a long enough race really to expose that tyre wear disadvantage. But meanwhile what we can expose here is a move between always McKenzie and Bajulaz, where McKenzie up the inside, Bajulaz defends outside to inside for 11 into Bilstein at 12, and as they make the way out once again, right now Bajulaz definitely feeling the pressure and the pain of having to try and hold on to the final spot on the podium as they make the way up towards Vidal. But as they come roaring on through and up towards the chicane they go, Bajulaz defends it, puts the car in the middle of the road, McKenzie switches back to the outside, but definitely now I think tempers are starting to fray a little bit. I think McKenzie really started to get under the skin of Bajulaz, but in return here Bajulaz doing a stellar job of making sure to make that Elantra as wide as possible as they head on through to another lap. There goes James Carr past our cameraman in P2, 5.5 seconds up the road. And as they head across the timeline, just its personal best of the race, a 2:08.262, but by comparison, McKinsey there with a 2:08.2. It's not his best, a 2:08.1 at being his best over the course of the races so far. Onto the anchors they go here with what is 3 laps to go, including this one. And as they make the way around in the 15 minutes we are allotted, and Bajula's right now defending into Mercedes, turn number 2, and rolling his way on out here. And you can definitely see how he's really having to be conscious of picking those inside lines. For the simple reason that as they make the way out of 3 and in towards 4, the challenge for Bajula's is if he can't defend here at Mercedes Arena, no, I think McKinsey will have him in the run out of the arena and then up towards the next couple of corners. But this is where they equal out a little bit in this second sector as they come down towards turn number 6. It does look as though Bajula's here a little bit more hooked up and able to equal his rival, but then the latter half of the lap as well. Again, McKinsey does have a really strong run from quarter to quarter. Now, meanwhile, Francois Schinck at the back of this group, who we ride on board with here, the Big Buzz Energy driver, still trying to find his way past Justin Rhodes as they head down towards the braking zone for turn number 8. And well, he's going to of course be watching the battle between McKinsey and Bajula's because he wants to get in there if they really start to take shades out of one another in terms of lap time and also potentially start picking up damage off one another. But meanwhile, he has got that colossal rear end of Justin Rhodes, a Lancia, the breakfast for dinner Delta driver here, proving to be a thorn in the side of Schinck as they make the way on up towards turn number 11, but as they make the way into the braking zone again, Schinck just not able to close up, and the velocity here, a jack of all trades but master of none in terms of the relative performance of the cars based on the balance of performance of iRacing. But of course, being a jack of all trades, it doesn't quite have that top end that the Lancia can deliver in the run through the Schumacher S. But as they head down towards Vidal again for Schinck, it's all about being close, staying close, and pressuring his rival all the way through to making a potential mistake, and this time as close as he'll possibly ever be within a 10th here as he takes a look, and he's so close under braking but not close enough to try and tease out the move on the inside. Instead he has to wait, as meanwhile ahead of them Bajula's continue to be pressured as they make the way through turn number 16 and down towards 1. 2 minutes to go, and they will go on to another lap after this one they've gone on to with the leader, where's Wojciech Świrydowicz already across the timeline and down towards turn 1. It's going to be close, but I think we will see an 8th lap turned here today in sprint heat 1. But meanwhile McKinsey looks up the inside, he goes all in on the brakes here, it's his only chance. And meanwhile Francois Schinck up the inside there of Justin Rhodes and leaves it as late as possible. But McKinsey now having to defend from the counter attack of Bajula's as they make the way through 2 and down towards 3. Onto the brakes they go, and Bajula's now swarming all over the back of him as they make the way through 3 and into 4. And Schinck behind under pressure. There's a bit of contact there between Rhodes and Schinck, a tap on the rear end, and that shows you Rhodes trying to get his nose in there at turn number 4, trying to get a move on, but in then Schinck turning on in, not seeing it coming. And what a be fair, I don't think he would have expected Rhodes to try and get his nose in. It didn't quite work out, but the two of them have reset and go racing once again in order as they were. And Francois Schinck were daring move into turn number 1, much like Logan McKinsey up the inside of Bajula's, and now both drivers have gained at one place for it, but the battles will go to the line. Meanwhile, looking a bit further back here, it's not just about the drivers inside the top 10. Mark Darnell still chasing after Kirk Lane as they make the way through 6 and into 7, and right now it does look as though the privateer here in the Lancia really just not quite able to get close enough to force the issue, instead having to wait and potentially pressure Lane into mistakes. They make the way down towards turn number 8 for the penultimate time, but as they come through again, it's going to be very close. This may be the last lap. We are very close potentially to what is getting another lap in. We do look from them back up to the battle for P3, and McKinsey now starting to extract a little bit of an advantage of half a second as he comes out to turn number 12 and makes his way up towards Vidal here, and this may just be enough to keep him safe on the final lap, whether it be this lap or the next one. But as they make the way on through, we do look to our leader here of Wojciech Świrydowicz as he comes out to the final corner. He will get one more lap in, with the fact he does have 10 seconds to go, and therefore the checker flag will not come out. The white flag is waving, and the privateer goes on to our final lap in this sprint heat number 1. But as he crosses the line there, James Carr currently trying to keep Świrydowicz honest, but the gap opens up more and more, and further back Jerome Bajula's here in a side-by-side run versus McKinsey on the outside here, and the two of them have had a battle out of turn number 16, and right now Bajula's finds himself in that very heavily compromised outside line where he's got to try and carry all the speed up towards 2, but in return, in fact, he goes to the cutback here and gets McKinsey to go a bit deep and capitalises. McKinsey still there, nose on the inside. It's side by side through 2 and into 3 they go. They give each other enough space to breathe, and as they make the way down into 3, Bajula's tries to compress McKinsey to the apex, but McKinsey says, no, I'm here to stay. Side by side through 3, into 4 they go. Bajula's is still there. Neither one of them wants to give way. This is brilliant racing action between the pair, and as they make the way down towards turn number 6 now, it is McKinsey who holds the inside line. The circuit opens up a little bit but with this now, it's harder to go outside to inside here through 6 and 7, given the way the road is cambered as they make the way down into turn number 7, and Vajulaz has to back out for a brief while as they make the way on towards the Dunlop hairpin. But as they come on down the hill, of course, now Vajulaz will be thinking, I've got him potentially in my sights. I know what I can do, how I know I can pressure him and go side by side, and can he get it done? We can't quite get it done here, and with Francois Schinck a whole second back, I think it will be between the two of them, with his fellow Beaverbuzz energy driver behind, just holding formation and waiting to see what happens. But as they make the way through the chicane and charge on through, we're hearing that Micah Hendricks has had to jump to the pits. He's been towed to the pits due to an incident, and therefore we do have one driver who I believe will not be finishing this race on the lead lap. But as we see Vajulaz rolling his way up into turn number 11 right now, no advantage this time, and well, with that in mind, I think he's running out of time of day here in this race. But of course, P4 at the end of this race, that will mean he'll be starting on reverse grid pole for race number 2, so it's not all doom and gloom. But meanwhile, looking from them to your race leader, well, he's been absolutely flawless in qualifying, decimating the field by a considerable margin, and now he goes on to take the win by 6 seconds at the line. It's Wojciech Świrydowicz who is your winner in race number 1 here at the Nürburgring GP-Strecke circuit. 6 seconds clear of that James Carr in the end, who comes on home P2 for breakfast for dinner, and it'll be Logan McKenzie who comes across the line, fend off Jerome Vajulaz all the way to the end. The yellow flag motorsports driver there to complete our overall and alpha podium, and it'll be Francois Schinck P5. Justin Rhodes comes on home to add another win to his tally, P6 there in the Delta class, P6 overall. John Laus on P7, Matt Shepka P8, Jacob Wally P9, and a great race from him. David Bauer P10, and it'll be Kurt Smith who crosses the line there in P11, followed by Kirk Lane in P12 as he comes across the line, and he will just miss out on the podium slot in the Deltas ahead of Mark Darnell. Eric Statzer comes on home there, P14 at the line in a drag race versus Connor Achitella, and it'll be Wiley Cox shortly who comes on home in P16 there, a minute off of our winner overall, but still in it all the way to the end. And to be fair, early on in the race, Wiley Cox really put up a great fight, but losing out after a mistake or two midway through the race. We then will, a few seconds later, have Daniel Cedeno coming on through to complete his race, but Wiley Cox then P16, and then Daniel Cedeno as he makes his way through Vidal here, where it has not quite worked out in race number 1, and we will have Micah Hendricks finishing a lap down in P18. But as we see it, Cedeno heading around and to the line, the Hassel's Motorsports driver may have a little bit more fortune in race number 2 that will be coming up very shortly. But there he takes his checker flag, ladies and gentlemen, and what a fantastic race from start to finish. And well, now our drivers will of course be taken back to the grid. We get ready to go again for race number 2. Now, as they get ready to line up, of course, this time we can't walk you through it, the grid due to limitations of the replay file. But as we see Daniel Cedeno to be one of our first drivers to take to the grid, Jerome Vajulaz will be your pole sitter for this race, with the fact he finished P4 in the overall classification in race number 1. And that will mean that we will have Wojciech Świrydowicz starting in P4. And between them, it will be James Carr who starts P3 and Logan McKenzie who starts on the front row alongside Jerome Vajulaz in P2. But as all of our drivers gradually make their way onto the grid, we look to Kurt Smith here, the Not Last Motorsports driver. Will be starting P10. Really the leader of the Delta pack beyond Justin Rhodes, of course your winner in the Delta class, who finished P6 and we started 6th place. So therefore Rhodes looking to really make it a pair of wins so far. But as they get ready to go, we'll look at a little bit further back. Can Wiley Cox redeem himself after a difficult way it ended? Well, we look to the front of the field and we await the lights. Lights out and away we go here for race 2 of the day as Jerome Vajulaz gets a good start in the run down towards turn number 1, and as shortly our camera pans on around here and they make their way into the braking zone, we can see Vajulaz here holding the defensive line. Meanwhile McKenzie trying to go around the outside, James Cole going very deep and just about making the corner and missing it in the end as they make the one up out of the turn 1 and into the Mercedes arena. But Francois Schinck gains from the mistake there of Carr, and as they make their way through turn 2 and down into 3, Justin Rhodes there started to try and bottle everyone up behind him in terms of making sure he does not get a leakage of cars coming on through. David Bauer, Matt Shepka having to fight over position behind the breakfast dinner driver, and then Shepka here being potentially passed by John Laus on the outside. They make the way out to turn number 4 and down towards 6. Further back we can see Kurt Smith battling again with Kurt Lane. Also Connor Agitella breaking away from them as they do have Micah Hendricks behind trying to get into the fray after Hendricks having that difficult end to race number 1. But as they make their way down through turn number 6 and into 7, Kurt Lane now on the outside of Hendricks, and Hendricks sipes his way out the inside as Wiley Cox fends off Mark Darnell, and Darnell will pressure from Daniel Sedino behind. But meanwhile, as they make their way on through there, and a little bit of a tank slapper almost for Darnell, but he just about survives it as they head on down. Well, Darnell's going to have to run into turn number 8 and get ahead for now, and Wiley Cox defends there as Daniel Sedino backs off on the rear guard. But as they make the way out to turn number 8, it's now the run up through the Schumacher crest for the first time of asking here in another 15-minute race, and Jerome Bergiles holds on to the lead as they come up towards turn number 11. Now Bergiles nailed the start, and as they make the way down towards turn number 11 at this point, Logan McKenzie and Wojciech Świrydowicz fighting one another very hard as they make the way through 11 into 12, and Świrydowicz, of course, I think will feel as though he'd get through as long as he's given an opportunity, given the pace he's brought to the table here. And in return, I think Logan McKenzie really needing to decide, is he going to go hunting after Bergiles and effectively have to let Świrydowicz go at some point in order to try and battle for what would be that P2 and potentially the win, or does he dig in and defend P2 but also risk leaving Bergiles to run away with the lead? And that will be the challenge that only he can fathom. As meanwhile, Eric Stats are battling here with Jacob Wally on the outside and Stats on the inside, and he has to back off there, and in backing off it costs him a lot of speed as they make the way into turn number 60. We've got a car making its way into the pits, and that's Justin Rhodes coming on in. We're not sure exactly what's happened. Is there damage to Rhodes' car, or is there something a little bit more sinister? Perhaps there's a drive-through penalty for an early launch of the line. We didn't quite see anything, but it does look as though Rhodes has had a very difficult start to his race. As meanwhile, we look to drivers making the way on through down towards lap number 2, and Matt Shepke here having lost a little bit of time at the start of the race, having to fend off Eric Statzer and Micah Hendricks. They make their way into turn 1 and gets his nose right in there and gets the move done, but Hendricks comes on through now to go past Statzer as well and tries to put the pressure on in the battle of the Hondas as they make their way through 2 and down into 3, but coming rolling on down into the left-hander here. We look a little bit further back to Kurt Smith, who's caught up behind Eric Statzer as we ride on board with the Not Last Motorsports driver here and really putting the pressure on his fellow Honda driver as they make the way now. Well, he's not a Honda driver, of course, his rival Honda driver, we should say, as they make the way in towards turn number 6. McLaren on down at this point. The Canadian here, as close as he may be, he's got to give himself some breathing room to potentially make the moves on the car that's running the Grid Life license plate there. And as they make the way through the right hand of turn at number 7 and down towards 8 they go. Well, not quite close enough there to make a move, but also too close to really back it off and sling the car on in. But meanwhile, we must look from them to the front of the field, because Logan McKenzie and Jerome Bergiles are side by side in the run up towards the Schumacher after coming out to turn number 8. Świrydowicz is behind there, and McKenzie trying to make ground. And well, it's deja vu, of course, with these two battling in race number 1, but this time they're battling for the win and to be on the podium. But Świrydowicz looks up the inside here and gets the move on McKenzie. He sees his opportunity and he puts it there, as meanwhile James Carr up the inside of Francois Schink, but Schink's not backing out into Bilstein. And as they make the way down through 12 and head up towards Vito they go, well, Schink comes back on through, and James Carr in the end has to switch to the inside here with the overspeed coming off of the exit curb. He's going to have his nose on the inside running through 13. It's a flat out run, but meanwhile up front Świrydowicz on the outside here versus Bergiles as they make the way into the left-right complex. Around the outside he goes, and Bergiles there, as much as he tried to outbrake the Polishman, could not find a way, and Świrydowicz takes the lead of this race for the first time as they make the way into turn number 16. And coming on through, James Carr is still stuck in the line, and well, with the battling of the leaders, really that battle between Carr and Schink has been neutralised in terms of the fact that now they've caught back up once again after losing a whole second in their battle, but now they're right on the heels of the leaders as they make the way down towards turn 1 once again in the run on down. James Carr looks up the inside here, meanwhile it's 3 wide, a bit of contact, oh goodness me, McKenzie there being squished on the run into the corner, literally on both sides, and there's even further contact as everyone tries to figure their way on through, with Bergiles being turned around with the contact with McKenzie. I think McKenzie, to be fair, may be foaming at the mouth a little bit in the fact that he was there, and then suddenly 2 cars decided to compress him and tried to turn him into 1 car when it couldn't quite work. 3 into 2 into 1 does not go. They had to give one another space as they make the way out. Well, David Bauer, in all of the chaos and confusion, has taken P3 in this race, albeit with elbows out there with regards to a bit of contact with the pair, but he's found his way on through, and the breakfast for dinner driver now makes his way into the last slot on what is the overall podium. podium and also the Alpha podium. But the thing with this is, with how they battled one another, if we ride on board the gearbox right now, you'll notice that there's a couple of drivers further behind, all taking little peeks on one another. And that's the run all the way down to P9 now. We have got 7 drivers, all condensed in the space of 2 seconds as they make the way on out to turn number 8. And Achatella's just found his way past Schink behind in the battle for P8. But meanwhile, David Bauer here, as we ride on board the gearbox of his car, making his way up here and looking back to the menacing grill, Logan McKenzie's Yellow Flag Motorsports Elantra. Will Bauer's got to really go now, because I think McKenzie at this point will be raising one eyebrow and going, okay, that's the way it's going to be. I want my place back, as they make the way into turn number 11, and Bauer goes a little bit deep, but it doesn't cost him as they come on through, and the pack behind is all concertinaing in as they make the way through the corner. But meanwhile, Kurt Smith there going very wide and high on the run out of 11, but just about keeps it on circuit and moves up into P2 in the Delta class around the outside of Eric Statzer, and that is P12 overall. But as they head up towards Vido, we look to the battle for P3 that makes its way into the aforementioned chicane. And going through left on right here, we can see David Bauer right now showing no signs of hesitancy or needing to worry. But meanwhile, into the pits comes Jerome Berjulaz. We've also got, their goodness me, and we've got a car onto what is the grass there, and that's Micah Hendricks. We're getting it very wrong coming out of Vido, but we do have into the pit lane Jerome Berjulaz, and I think we've also got Francois Schinkin as Hendricks there waiting up on the pit exit. I'm not sure if he's trying to creep back onto the circuit or make his way into the pit lane, but either way, 3 drivers there, very difficult moments, and I wonder how much damage they've got to repair on their cars. But meanwhile, they make the way on down towards turn number 1. Well, Achatella here pressing on and trying to make his way in towards turn number 2 at the moment and get past Jacob Wally, who now has taken the lead in the Delta class as they make the way down towards 3 here. And well, for Jacob Wally at this point, this is a huge opportunity, given that Justin Rhodes for that very early pit stop, of course, and that was to repair damage as we understand it. Well, Rhodes is down in P17, so Wally right now looking at a huge point score, which will negate the score of what was Rhodes in race number 1 as best it possibly can. But meanwhile, as we look from them to David Bauer, will right now continuing to try and pressure Logan McKenzie here, and McKenzie doing everything in his power to really mount the pressure on, and behind John Lauzon just watching in the wings at the moment and waiting for that opportunity to try and make a move as they head down towards turn number 8. But onto the brakes they go, no way through at the moment. Meanwhile, Shepka there a little bit further back with Conor Achatella up the inside of what is Jacob Wally there, and Wally's not going to give in here as they make the way up towards the Schumacher S. It's going to be side by side, Wally on the inside. I think Achatella there sensibly backing off, but Wally goes a little bit deep. He catches the car just about there. Well, I thought he was going to go towards the gravel and almost head towards our camera as they make the way out of the S and up towards turn number 11 they go. Onto the brakes here with 7 minutes remaining. And as they come on through the left right here, coming out to Bilstein very shortly, Achatella definitely right now finding his match in the Delta driver. As further back, Daniel Sedino trying to put the pressure on Kirk Lane here in the battle for P2 in the Delta class. And Lane, as I understand it, well, it'll be the first time he's been running in P2 for some time in the class and looking to try and hold on what would be his highest place finish over the course of the season. Meanwhile, McKenzie up the inside of Bauer there as they make the way through, but he has to give the space back in terms they make the way side by side into and out of Vido. Meanwhile, John Lauzon looks at this and goes, okay, well, we're going to have a freeway fight now as they make the way out of the final corner and on towards the timing line. And, well, it's too wide there between Lauzon and what is there, McKenzie. McKenzie's ahead by nose, and Bauer, meanwhile, immediately pulling over to the inside. A snap reaction there to say, I do not want to lose these positions. You two fight on the outside and I'll just defend. But as they make the way down towards turn 1, well, Lauzon there having to try and go on the inside on McKenzie, but also being compressed to the line, and McKenzie not being given the space there. There's a bit of contact between himself and David Bauer as they make the way through turn 2 and into 3. And what is gloves off here between these 3 drivers, and we absolutely love it in touring car style racing, albeit so long as they keep it within the limits. And as they make the way through turns 3 and 4 right now, any one of these 3 could be on that final step of the overall podium and also the Alpha podium, but which one of them is it going to be as they make the way down towards turn number 6 once again. Now as they make the way on through the left into right here, you can see Wally and Achatella behind. I think Achatella right now must be absolutely saying to himself, I want to be past this guy, because in front there's a huge battle and he could be in it to win it in terms of being on the podium in the Alpha class. But as they make the way down towards 8, he continues to find himself behind Jacob Wally, who's putting in very strong laps. A look up there from Achatella under braking. And as they coming out the corner, well, that's not going to aid him in his aspirations, as that will take a bit of life out of the front tyres as they make the way in towards the Schumacher S. And Bauer continues to hold on as they go left, right and up towards the left-hand return at number 11. but rolling on through, we ride on board here with John Lauzon, who really gives us a front row seat view with regards to McKenzie looking up the inside of Bauer. Bauer gives McKenzie the space there, but carries the speed on round as the Elantra trio make their way into Bilstein. Now rolling on through, of course, you can see them almost drifting under braking there into the corner with that rear brake balance, really trying to get the rear of the car to lift off and roll into the corner. With these cars naturally wanting to understeer, a rear brake bias will help them oversteer into corner entry, and as they make their way up towards Vidal, we're now all line astern for the moment. Nobody able to really look for the move this time, but Lauzon, of course, being crafty the last time we came through the chicane. Can he find a way to be crafty once again? Well, not at the moment, as they come out of the final corner shortly with 4 minutes to go by the time they get to turn number 1, but still plenty of time to go, and with it plenty of battling still on the cards. But as they make the way on down here, you can see all of them right now trying to follow in the toe of David Bauer, who's weaving from one side and gradually making his way back over to the other, but wary of the fact that anyone could try and pop the move from a long way back. And as they make the way into turn number 1, well, Bauer goes a little bit deep, McKenzie up the inside, Bauer still holds the inside run into turn number 2. They come on through the left hand, and McKenzie cuts back here, and this is looking good for McKenzie as they make the way into 3. And here it's very hard to go round the outside, but we can see that Bauer's going to try it all the way, but McKenzie down the tight line, he turns on through and he gets it done. And Logan McKenzie with a stellar run from the Mercedes Arena picks up P3. Now it's on Bauer and Lauzon, who out of these two will be in P4 and trying to chase McKenzie on down, or can they let one another go as they make the way through 6 into 7? I think neither driver wants to give him, but Lauzon on the inside coming through 7, and he gets it part there on apex and holds off Bauer and moves up into P4. But as they make the way down towards turn number 8, I agree with you there, Mark Darnell on the YouTube chat, a very smooth move from Logan McKenzie, as smooth as steel, because they make the way down towards turn number 8, and there's a reason why he's right up in the championship standings. Meanwhile, John Lauzon coming on through, turn number 8 goes a little bit deep, and Bauer there on the inside, it'll be the outside up towards the Schumacher crest, but he's not got the space to put the Bauer down. He's going to have to back it off for the time being. Adstella continues to find himself, meanwhile, behind Wally as they make the way up towards 11, and still no signs of progress. As they head into left hand, I think now for Adstella, if he can't find his way through on this lap, he might start to have to spread or threaten the move into turn number 1 on those heavy braking zones, because being this close for so long, well, it does start to have an effect on the front tyres, and you can imagine he wants to try and push the pace for the last couple of laps to hunt down Bauer and Lauzon, but that's testament as well to how much pace that Wally is capturing from corner to corner. Meanwhile, a little bit further back, Kurt Smith here, more having recently been battling with Wiley Cox, has now moved up behind Mark Darnell and is trying to battle for P4 in the Delta class, P11 overall, as Kurt Lane and Daniel Sedano have changed places, and Sedano up to P2 in the class, P9 overall. As we see here, Darnell right now not having to worry too much about defending versus Kurt Smith, or should he be worrying here? Smith looks up the inside, he goes all in on the brakes and gets it nailed there into the apex of 14 as they make the way out to Vito and up towards turn number 16, and Kurt Smith continues to come through the field. But as they make the way through turn number 16 and head on to what will be, as we understand it, the final lap of today, it's going to be very close to be fair, with Świrydowicz making his way through the left hand of turn number 3 at the moment. And I think if we're going to get one more lap after this, if we will get an 8th lap, it will literally be by a hair's width. We'll have to wait and see. Świrydowicz continuing to lead this race by 2.6 seconds and growing over James Carr, who runs in P2 for breakfast for dinner, and right now just does not seem to have an answer for the pace of the Polishman up front. But as they head into turn 6 and 7, a bit further back, Logan McKenzie here, definitely right now breaking clear of John Lauzon and proving the point in terms of how much pace he had in that battling behind Bauer, and also earlier on with Jerome Virgilaz and company. Virgilaz in the pit lane with a retirement, as we understand it. The same for Franz Washing and also Micah Hendricks. All three drivers having a difficult second race, but as they make the way on down the hill, Adstella continues to stay put behind Jacob Wally for now, and Shepka not close enough to get in the fight right at the end with a gap of 2 seconds as it currently stands. We can definitely see there how the Elantra really flying on strong, and then our highest place next car is with the Honda Civic tyre part of Shepka as it makes its way into the Schumacher S here. And right now P8 for Torque Steer Racing, the American driver doing everything he can, find everything with regards to the car, and that's one thing you can count on with Shepka, actually trying to do everything he can in the Honda to fly it through every corner. And as he makes his way in towards turn number 12 at the moment, Wally under pressure as they head on through and up towards Vidal. But now down towards what is the chicane they'll go, and well, can Wally find a way to keep Attila at bay? Attila's very close here, and Wally's going to go defensive, but we do have a checker flag coming out, ladies and gentlemen, so we will have to cut away, because it will be 2 wins out of 2 for Wojciech Świrydowicz as he comes to line in the 80 car to make it a perfect run on through this round so far, and it'll be James Carr P2 there, and then Logan McKenzie will come on through to take P3 at the line, ahead of John Lauzon and David Bauer, with Connor Agitella just pipping at Jacob Wally to P6 overall come the finish. But I think Jacob Wally will not be too displeased with it, because that's still a Delta class win for the Breakfast for Dinner driver ahead of Matt Shepka P8, and it'll be Daniel Sedino who finishes P2 in the Delta class, P9 overall, setting a personal best on the final lap ahead of Kirk Lane, who arrives on the podium there, the privateer, P10 overall ahead of Kurt Smith, and it'll be Mark Darnell, Wiley Cox, Eric Statzer, and then at last of our drivers on the grid in terms of finishing on the lead lap, it will be Justin Rhodes as he makes his way through 14 and 15 with the 3 retirements of Jerome Bergez, Franz Washing and Micah Hendricks. 18 started, but it's going to be 15 who finish as the Breakfast for Dinner driver comes to the line after a difficult race number 2, undermining all the hard work that went in race number 1. But still, he'll be looking to race number 3. There's no question about it as he heads on across the line. And now we transition over to our warm-up session. Now, of course, this warm-up session, being 5 minutes in duration, gives us ample time to have a brief breather and give you a quick recap of the results from races 1 and 2. But I think what we can definitely say about the races so far, it has been tight, it's been tense, and also it's been absolutely terrific with plenty of side-by-side action. And well, speaking of those results so far, here are the results for race number 1 firstly, sprint heat number 1. And Wojciech Świrydowicz there taking the win by 5.7 seconds over James Carr, with the privateer flying clear of the field based on his qualifying lap and starting on pole and never letting go. James Carr for Breakfast for Dinner there was really the best of the rest in the field in terms of pace, bringing home P2 ahead of Logan McKenzie P3 there, the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver who managed to find a way past Jerome Bergez just before the finish, and then Bivas Energy driver there being denied the podium, but still at P4, and that was for reverse grid P1 in race number 2, and he was followed up there by fellow Bivas Energy teammate Franz Washing. They completed the top 5 before we came to our Delta winner in P6 of Justin Rhodes there, the Breakfast for Dinner driver, finishing a little bit further down, but still a stellar result for him. And then John Lauzon P7 ahead of Matt Shepka P8, followed by Jacob Wally P9 and David Bauer to complete the top 10. And then best of the rest there in terms of outside the top 10, Kurt Smith P11 to round off the Delta podium, which consists of Justin Rhodes on the top step, Jacob Wally on the second step, and Kurt Smith on the third step. And he just managed to beat Kirk Lane to that post, who finished P12 ahead of Mark Darnell and Eric Statz. So the 3 privateers there in sequence, with the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver Connor Agitella P15, Wiley Cox P16, Daniel Sedino P17, and then the last of our finishers, albeit a lap down for Hassel's Motorsports behind his teammate Micah Hendricks there in P18. Now that's the race number 1 results. Now as we come on to our second race results, of course, and we are just waiting for those to pop up on screen. In fact, they will come on through now. We can see here that Wojciech Świrydowicz taking the win in what was race number 2, or sprint heat 2, ahead of James Carr once again, albeit by a slightly smaller margin this time of 3.8 seconds. And Świrydowicz having to fight his way into lead, but after taking the lead, never looking back after that event. James Carr for Breakfast for Dinner finding his way on through all the carnage and chaos in that battle for P2 at the midpoint of the race, and then just disappearing off into the distance. And Logan McKenzie there, the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver, steering clear in the end to bring home the final step of the overall in the Alpha podium, ahead of John Lauzon for Beaver Buzz Energy, who just finished 2 tenths behind him at the line, and David Bauer in P5 there for Breakfast for Dinner. Connor Agitella in P6 for Yellow Flag Motorsports, not quite able to find a way into the top 5, having spent so long behind Jacob Wally, who was able to beat on the final lap, albeit we couldn't quite catch that on camera. And then Jacob Wally taking the win in the Delta class, P7 overall. The Breakfast for Dinner driver there, enjoying a fantastic start to his championship campaign under the banner of Breakfast for Dinner, of course previously a privateer. Matt Shepka P8 for Talk Steer Racing ahead of Daniel Sedino from Hassel's Motorsports, who made it a better race number 2, and Kirk Lane completing the top 10, and with it the Delta podium there in P10, the privateer, and with the Delta podium of Jacob Wally, Daniel Sedino and Kirk Lane being followed up by the Delta driver of Kurt Smith there, best of the rest in terms of the overall finishing positions in P11. The last motorsports driver there, been followed up by the three privateers of Mark Darnell, Wiley Cox and Eric Statzer, with Justin Rhodes being P15 after a difficult start, having to come into the pits to repair damage to the car, and in the end being the last driver to finish on the lead lap. And then we had the three retirees of Jerome Bajulas of Bivaz Energy and his teammate Francois Schink, and then Micah Hendricks of Hassel's Motorsports having a difficult second race of the day. And can he potentially turn things around in the next race? Of course, the sprint feature that's coming up in just under 1.5 minutes time. And well, with regards to that order of events, we can see there the sprint feature race, 30 minutes in duration, double the duration, and therefore it does put a greater emphasis on needing to manage the tyres just as much as managing at one's pace and being able to go straight flat out from the start. And who is going to be able to pull off the major result come the end of it, we'll wait and find out very soon. But as our drivers get ready to go here, of course we do look to Mark Darnell making his way on around right now with a minute, and this gives us a good opportunity to take a quick sip of water if you don't mind. And as we do, they get a slight connection issue on the iRacing replay file, but by the looks of things, that has settled itself down quite nicely. Those do happen every so often, of course, as drivers make their way in and out of the menus in the pit lane, and particularly from our driver who's provided us with our iRacing replay file for tonight. But as Mark Darnell comes on down, he's been battling quite hard today in the top 5 of the Delta class and really trying to fight there for his podium. Not quite able to pull off a podium so far, but still one more race to go, and you never know what can happen. This next race is a bit more about consistency rather than outright pace, and with drivers having a high propensity of dropping it around here in terms of falling off the circuit, anything can happen. But speaking of things happening, the checker flag is about to come out on this warm-up session, and we get ready to go to the grid. So as our drivers get ready to go racing once again, they make the way onto the grid. And of course, now we have the top 8 inversion. And well, who will be on the very front row? That will be the question that we await the confirmation for as our drivers all get themselves set. Of course, Logan McKenzie starting a bit further back this time with that top 3 finish. That will put him P6 on the grid. Wojciech Świrydowicz will have to come through the field from P8. Jerome Bajulas, meanwhile, starting a lot further back there on what will be the penultimate row with that early retirement in race number 2. And he's going to fight his way on through the field. But I think for Connor Achatella, well, he will be close to pole position here, if not off pole position. In fact, there's another row in front of him. In fact, I think it is Matt Shepka, if my memory serves me correctly. He'll be starting on pole, and well, we wait for Shepka to take to the grid as we see more and more of our drivers making the way on through. Jacob Wally will be P2, and then it is Shepka who takes reverse grid pole as he gets ready to go. Of course, just over a minute, but we've already got the gridding process complete. We await the lights. It's a jump start there for David Bauer. He's launched off the line, and with that he will be expected, I think, to slow down and come into the pits. But Shepka goes, and what a bit of an unexpected way to start the race. But Shepka getting a good start as meanwhile everybody else behind, and we've almost got 4 wide there. 3 wide as Jake Wally given a tap on the rear by Logan McKenzie as they make the way on through. Connor Asher safe around the outside. McKenzie takes the position, but meanwhile James Carr-Spiridowicz and also John Lauzon all stack up behind him in the Constantino as Wally now has to get himself composed, and McKenzie just a nose ahead as they make the way into turn number 3, and they're going to go 2 wide through 3 and into 4 as we can see they're just behind James Carr, lurking on behind, and he looks to come through, and James Carr goes to the Moses manoeuvre here, gets the cut back. It's 3 wide, and it was 1 wide as James Carr gets it done and takes 2 places on a run of 1 corner. But as they make the way down through turn number 6, he goes overly deep on cold tyres, and all the hard work is undone as meanwhile Wally here in contact with McKenzie as they make the way through. We've got James Carr gradually making his way back onto the circuit there, but I think stopping just in time before he brought the car straight across the tarmac in a very tooth and nail moment. But meanwhile behind, it's not just about the top 10 as Kirk Lane here trying to fight versus Justin Rhodes to get inside the top 10 as they go side by side into the Dunlop Carrier hairpin at turn number 8. Lane on the inside, Rhodes on the outside, and as they make the way on out, well, right now it's incredibly feisty. We're only half a lap in on this 30-minute race, but everybody right now going all in to bring home a major result here from the start, and we love to see it. Wiley Cox here trying to fend off Micah Hendricks and at the same time go hunting after Rhodes as they make the way up towards turn number 11. Into left-hander they go, and will Cox there falling back as Hendricks takes the move on the inside and comes on through to take P13. As they make the way into the next corner, now Cox has to fend off Schink, who goes around the outside, and Schink I think will have the comfort. And easy gets on through, have the comfort of that speed. It may be able to carry it all the way up towards Vidal. But meanwhile, looking to the front of the field here, David Bauer has found his way past Shepka on this open lap, albeit slightly off camera. And now as Shepka tries to chase him down, well, Bauer, of course, has to come into the pit and make his way on through, because he will have a drive-through penalty for that jump start, or if not a drive-through penalty, it'll be a stop-start penalty. Meanwhile, we see here Konachitella taking the lead off of Shepka coming at the final corner, and the yellow flag motorsports driver here now makes his way down towards turn number 1 once again. Then the charge on down. Achitella now will find himself in the tricky situation, which is he's got to try and hold off a Honda, which will be giving it everything on the brakes. It won't have the straight line speed, but it will have the ability to go on the offensive into those heavy braking zones. And of course, the more these two fight, the more likely they'll be seeing the likes of Wally and also Lauzon and Świrydowicz close on up. As we look back to John Lauzon here, who's got the pressure of Świrydowicz up his inside, as he also finds himself, they've been boxed in slightly by Jacob Wally. And to be fair, the Delta leader right now, he doesn't have to give way to these guys, as we explained earlier, and he's doing a stellar job of holding on to that P3 as they make the way out to turn number 4 through the kink of 5 and down towards 6 they go in the charge. A bit further back, Hendricks now battling side by side with fellow Honda driver, with the Hasholz Motorsports driver trying to go around what is lane there in turn number 6, and lane there tucks back in just about as they make the way into turn number 7, and all these drivers in sequence. Meanwhile, Kurt Smith off onto the gravel there coming through turn number 7. I'm not sure if there was contact with Kurt Smith or whether he just went off of his own volition, but either way that has cost him very dear and dropped him all the way down from what was P8 at the time down to P15. But meanwhile, Francois Schenk up the inside of Kirk Lane as they make the way on through the hairpin, and Justin Rhodes trying to do the same as they drag race the way up towards the Schumacher S, and Lane tucks back in behind there as Rhodes gets it done with the overspeed, and now they come charging through up towards turn number 11. But as they do, line astern, these drivers all the way in towards the braking zone. Nobody able to see an advantage right now, and I think all settling down for a brief moment. But any moment it can kick off once again, as meanwhile Smith here chasing after old rival of what is Eric Statzer, battling for what is P14 overall, P7 in class and Statzer defends there as Smith decides to go for the cutback, takes plenty of curve with it, and as they make the way out of 12 and now up towards 14 they go. James Carr has served his stop and go penalty, and as they make the way up towards Vidal in the charge now, Smith's going to look to the inside, Statzer on his right, he'll go all in on the brakes here, so will Statzer to be fair, and as they make the way into the anchors there, Smith goes up the inside and gets the move done. Statzer will try and come back here in the run to 16, but I don't think he's got enough straight to do it. He goes on the brakes, he looks for it, but Kurt Smith says no, there's no way that's happening. He's got enough speed to stay clear and just takes his race in line. But a brilliant battle between the two of them. They change places at P14 as they head on down towards turn number 1. We look to turn 1, and Świrydowicz on the inside there of Wally, and now finding his way on past the Delta leader. I think Wally there battling as much as he can, but also having to respect the fact that Świrydowicz really now trying to put the hammer down, but Wally's still there on the inside of 2. On the inside of 3, Świrydowicz is going to be made to go all the way around the outside to get the inside into 4, but he backs out there. He hasn't got enough grip, and in fact Wally does find a way once again to frustrate all the Alphas behind, as the Delta driver now makes his way down towards turn number 6, re-ride on board the rear of his car as they make the way into the left-hander. But you can see that John Lauzon and also Logan McKenzie all so close behind Świrydowicz. They all want to come on through past Wally, but the thing is, when he's defending like this, good on the man to really try and stick it to them in terms of holding them off, as we do have a little bit of an interrupt there with regards to the connection. But as they make the way down into the braking zone here, Świrydowicz now up the inside. Wally's going to try and hold it high on the outside, but I think there he did need to be down a little bit lower on the ground as they make the way out of turn number 8. Well, Świrydowicz will have to defend now as Wally does get the momentum up the hill and making their way on through the Schumacher S, and now heading up towards turn number 11, and we can see here that Lauzon now trying to go on the offensive, looks up the inside. Wally brings it to the centre of the road, but Lauzon's already there. Onto the brakes they go, and now like a pack of dominoes they start to fall one by one into place. As you can see, Wally having to defend hard and Świrydowicz being released here, and the problem is Wally now in trying to defend versus Lauzon and McKenzie. It's only going to antagonise the pair of Alphas behind, because they can see Świrydowicz has still got 2 more cars to go before he can potentially take the lead and run off with it, and they do not want to be stuck behind the Delta driver here. They're all fighting for valid position, and as they make the way into Vidal, Wally again really just showing how much pace he brings to the table lap after lap, with McKenzie and Lauzon thwarted in coming on through as they make the way through turn number 16. But indeed there, as Mark Darnell says in the YouTube chat, is the case that Jacob is absolutely defending like a lion as they make the way down towards turn number 1, making the rear of that Elantra as wide as humanly possible. And as they head on down towards the hairpin, we look back to Justin Rhodes, who of course will know that Wally is leading the class ahead of him and is trying to keep everyone at bay. But meanwhile, speaking of keeping at bay, we do cut back to that battle for P3, in fact P4, and as they make the way through the left-hander turn number 2 and down towards 3, Laus on there on the outside. Meanwhile, McKinsey still there, and Wally again just puts the car on the inside of 3, makes Lauzon go deep, and Lauzon is forced into battling with McKinsey instead, and that's the exact way to do it. You need to force the 2 drivers behind you to fight one another. And you can see already McKinsey now looks up the inside into turn number 6. Can he get it done? No, but these little squabbles between the 2 of them open up that gap. And while he's able to get 6 tenths back in terms of holding the space and keeping it clear as they make their way down towards turn number 8. Meanwhile, Matt Shepke in the run towards turn number 8. P2 at the moment. And Wojciech Świrydowicz all over the rear of him as they make the way through the right-hand hairpin and up towards the Schumacher as they go very shortly. And can Shepka find a way on the brakes that Honda, and with the corner speeds it can carry to keep the Elantra behind at bay as they make the way into the fast-flying sequence of corners right now. I think Świrydowicz will be looking for the potential move here in the conclusion of the run to 11. Well, Shepka there brings it over to the racing line. Świrydowicz takes a little look, but I don't think he's close enough here. And of course, there's one thing you can count on with Shepka. We talked about the fact that he gives it his all in the Honda, so well versed in the Honda, he'll know exactly how late he can brake in that car. And well, if you're not going to win something versus Matt Shepka, it is the ability to outbrake him, unless he's made a mistake, but otherwise he is nearly faultless to a T. As we see here, Logan McKinsey gets the run out of Bilstein versus Lauzon. He gets ahead, but the gap between them and Wally has opened up to 1.1 seconds as they get to Vidal, and that goes to show this battling between the 2 of them has really given Wally a bit of breathing room, at least for a whole lap, to put down a good lap time and focus on trying to close back up to the battle for P2. But of course, the problem for him is with Shepka defending as he is versus Świrydowicz, that will force Wally in towards Świrydowicz and bring this whole group together once again. Or will it here as Świrydowicz gets a good run out of 16 plus the toe plus the straight line speed of the Elantra, and as they make the way down towards 1, I think Shepka's not going to fight this one too hard, or if he is, he'll fight it based on the strategic cutback. But as they make the way into turn 1 there, Shepka lets it go and Świrydowicz moves into P2 as they come through the left-hander of turn number 2 once more. But as they roll the way on out here, of course, the battling still to continue, and Jacob Wally now has the task of can he pick his way past the Honda driver, or will he find himself frustrated, much like the Alphas that he has frustrated previously. As they come through turn number 4 and down towards 6, we can see that Shepka goes a little bit wide and has to try and fight the car back onto the road surface to avoid a slowdown by cutting too wide. And as they make the way into turn number 6, now Wally really all over the rear of the Honda, but he cannot find a way on through, and now he is faced with a task which he has not faced so far today, which is can he find a way past the driver who seems just to have that edge to be able to keep in there lap after lap, corner to corner. But as they come down towards turn number 8 with Logan McKinsey and John Lauzon now within 4 attempts, well, Wally there tries to close the door, and McKinsey taking a look to the inside. He gets a sniff, but no more than that. And as Wally goes a bit wide, well, McKinsey's going to have to run up the hill here. He'll be on the outside, but I think Wally's going to have to pull back in, or will he? Now they'll go too wide through the Schumacher S, and Wally decided to fight it all the way. And as they make the way on up the hill and in towards turn number 11, will Wally lose that in the end? And meanwhile, Lauzon takes a little look, but he can't quite find it, and therefore has to wait his turn. Meanwhile, further back, I can tell you that Kurt Smith has just recently found his way past Mark Darnell as they make the way out of the Schumacher Crest and up towards 11 in the battle for what is P6 in the Delta class, P13 overall as they make the way through the left, right of 11 and 12 and through Bilstein they go very shortly. But as they come on down, their next target will be Wiley Cox, who's had a good race so far, gaining 2 overall places, 1 in class as he makes his way down towards Vidal chicane. But as he heads on through here, of course, Wiley Cox will now know that he does have 2 very fast flying Elantras behind him, and Will Kurt Smith will definitely be looking at Cox in the distance and thinking, oh, I want that next. Meanwhile, speaking of drives trying to take place here, Jerome Berjula has continued his recovery drive, picking his way out the inside there of Eric Statzer as he makes his way into the chicane and coming on through towards turn 16. He moves up to P15. Now coming into the right-hander of the final corner of the lap, and we look from them to your race leader. Well, here is Connor Adchter, who right now leading by 2.8 seconds. But I can tell you one thing right now, somebody is coming and knocking for that lead of the race, and that is Wojciech Świrydowicz, as that gap has come down already on this lap by 2 attempts in the opening 2 corners. And as they make the way on through, with that last lap, Świrydowicz set the best lap of the race so far at 206.9 compared to Connor Adchter's 207.7, and that goes to show you with a pace he is really bringing to bear here in this clear air and wanting to make it a triplet of wins and really cement his status at the top of the championship standings, because he's never won an AlphaTauri Change season as we understand it, and therefore right now he wants to get his name onto the all-important trophy as he makes his way down towards turn number 8. Meanwhile, we look to Kurt Smith here looking around the outside of Wiley Cox. On the brakes they go, and Cox their defenders. He might into turn number 6. Smith just able to find a way to outbrake him, but whilst that's going on, Logan McKenzie off camera up the inside of Shepka in the run into turn number 8 and gets it done there as they make the way up the hill, and now Shepka has to try and hold off Wally and Lauzon behind as they make the one through. We ride on board the gearbox here of Shepka in the Talk Steer Racing Civic Type R as the Lancia N Army holds on strong behind of Jacob Wally and John Lauzon. Albeit two different teams drivers there and two different classes of driver, with the Delta driver Wally trying to hold on to P5 overall as well and give himself another major result in his championship run. But as they make the way down out to turn number 12 and up towards Vidal they charge, where you can see that initially in the acceleration stage Shepka able to break away, but now as we start to get towards the midpoint and the latter portion of the straight, this is where the Honda does lose out, albeit you can also see there how Lauzon taking that peak versus Wally and trying to find a way to get in the Delta driver's head, but as they come through the chicane, Shepka there goes a little bit wide and Wally's going to have to run on the inside here through 16, and Shepka there now will find the door has been left open for John Lauzon to put his foot in as well, and as they make the way down the start finish straight, Shepka could lose 2 for the price of 1 as they make the way in towards turn number 1. Oh, it's going to be a battle on the brakes here, and of course Shepka now will find himself boxed inside with the Lancia on his right and the Lancia in front, and Lauzon there goes all in on the brakes. I think Shepka's got to let this one go and try and cut it back into 2, but he'll find neither at this rate as they make the way into the left-hander at turn number 2, and instead he loses the position there and drops to P6 overall, P5 in the Alpha class, as now Micah Hendricks is closing in 6 tenths down. As they make the way through at turn number 3 and up towards 4, the driver's now running in sequence for a brief while, but I believe we're not going to be too far away from another potential battle given the pace that Hendricks is showing and his pace matching the pace of what is Logan McKenzie in P3. To give you an idea, Logan McKenzie, the second fastest driver on the field right now compared to the fastest man of Wojciech Świrydowicz, but as they come on down through turn number 7 and up towards 8 they go. Kurt Smith a little bit further back here chasing down Kirk Lane to go for P4 in the Delta class, and Smith really continuing to rise through the ranks as they make the way on around this circuit. Not quite the halfway point. By the time they've completed this lap they will have cleared half distance in terms of time duration, but still plenty of racing to come. And speaking of a battle to come, as we look from the battle for what is P11 overall, we look to the battle for the lead overall, and here it's Connor Achitella, but looking behind you can see there Wojciech Świrydowicz closing very rapidly indeed as they make the way on through. Meanwhile, a little bit further back we have had Justin Rhodes finding his way on past Daniel Sedino at turn number 8. That happened off camera, but Justin Rhodes has now recovered to P2 in the Delta class, given how low down the order he started at the beginning of this race. And now the only driver between him and making another win on his cards will be Jacob Wally, who running in P4 at the moment. You would imagine that Rhodes has got a long way to go here if he wants to try and find that win. Indeed, he's got to pick his way past a multitude of Alpha drivers, but as we look from them to Kurt Smith here, battling side by side with Kirk Lane in the hunt for what is P4 in the Delta class. He moves up into P11 there for a temporal moment as they make the way into the braking zone. Lane's going to go in on the brakes, but Smith in the end has a little bit more on the racing line and gets it done, and now moves on through and goes hunting after Daniel Sedino, as meanwhile Kirk Lane has to come into the pit, and I suspect, well, it may not be damage on the car. Is it for track limits, and therefore has he picked himself up a drive-through penalty? We'll let you know as soon as we have any further information, ladies and gentlemen. But meanwhile, Wiley Cox, Mark Darnell and also Jerome Pagillas coming through to take the place that Kirk Lane gives up as they make the way onwards towards the next lap. As they come on down, here is your race leader, and we said it wouldn't be too far away before Świrydowicz got into the rear of Achitella, and as they make the way up towards turn number 6, well, Świrydowicz close, but not close enough at the moment, but definitely looking at this as we ride on board with the privateer, and he'll be looking to try and make the move, if not into turn 8 at the hairpin at the end of the next stretch, and then definitely looking at it at turn number 11, but he runs very high there and almost wide as they make the way on down towards the braking zone for the hairpin. And will Hendricks has just found his way past Shepka in the battle for P6 off camera, but focusing here on the leaders. You can see how Świrydowicz all over the back of Achitella at the moment, but again setting up the move here, not really trying to put the pressure on immediately. The move will come in the run to 11, alternatively in the run up towards Vidal, but as they head through the Schumacher S through turns 8, 9 and 10, they've gone now and up towards 11. They get ready to brake, well, the gap is 2 tenths at the moment. brings on to the racing line now, and I think trying to give a bit of security to Achetera, at least lull Achetera into a full sense of security and saying to him, okay, it may not be coming at this corner, but when is it coming in terms of that potential movement as they make the way through turn number 12. Both drivers on the power there, but Achetera gets a good run off the corner there. Notice how the gap opens up initially, but it's in the latter stage and in the draft now. This is where Świrydowicz will really gain, and now will Achetera go to the left? Will he stay in the middle of the road? He stays off centre on the right, and therefore Świrydowicz backs it off here and waits for the opportunity on the exit of Edo. Can he get a good run over 15? He does get a smooth run, and in fact they're into the pits. Well, to be denied a battle, Achetera has to come on in, and surely this is not for a drive-through penalty. If it is, it's going to put him a long way back. As Wojciech Świrydowicz takes the lead of this race, and Logan McKenzie, he picks up from where his Yellow Flag Motorsports teammate has left off. He moves up into P2 as they make the way across the timeline, and Jacob Wally now finds himself once again in P3 as your Delta leader. And well, we have never had a Delta driver, as far as my memory goes, finish on the overall podium in the sprint feature. Can he take that trend and buck it the other way and make it a historical moment today in Germany? As he makes his way through turn number 2 right now, I can tell you one thing, he's going for it, given the amount of defense he's putting on here, and just showing to everyone just how strong he could be in that Elantra as they make the way on through. Meanwhile, heading down towards turn number 1 here, battling side by side, Martell now up the inside of Wiley Cox. That's for P5 in the Delta class. P12 overall makes the move, and Achetera's come out behind, and as they make the way on down, I believe that actually Achetera has had to take a pit stop, so therefore perhaps it was not necessarily a stop and go, but perhaps an issue with the car, which they had to quickly fix as they make the way on through the Mercedes arena here. The battle in the Delta class rages on. And it just goes to show how close this Delta class is between drivers here, all enjoying these little battles and little moments in amongst one another. And Darnell ahead of Cox at the moment, but then again, moments later, could find himself battling once more. If Eric Stats are only a further half a second off the back of this pair. But as they make the way out to turn number 7, we do look from then to Daniel Sedino, who right now has Justin Rhodes behind him, as they make the way out to turn number 8 in the battle for P2 in class, P8 overall. And as they make the way out the hill, Sedino defending then to the Schumacher S. Will have lost will have the grip on that front end as they make the way on through, but he drifts a little bit there of understeer through turn number 9. That's going to cost him a bit of momentum, and you can see their Rhodes trying to go on the outside, so they don't defend. On the brakes they go, and around the outside Justin Rhodes goes, and he takes the P2 in class as they make the way into turn number 12. Nice move there from Rhodes, and I think just a small mistake costing Sedino dearly, as meanwhile we look back up to the battle for P3, but really right now it should be the battle for P4 or P3 in the Alpha class, because Micah Hendricks continues to sail his way up the order little by little. Albeit it sounds as though he's making it look easy. He's really able to grit his teeth and bear it all the way through it in terms of picking his way up through the order. Having started from the very back of the field in what was last place, now pushing on here, doing everything he can, and Hendricks flying on high as he makes his way down towards turn number 1 once again. In towards the braking zone he goes, and onto the anchors we can see there. Schink looking up the inside of Shepka, and on he goes. He drops down through the apex curve there, and I don't think Shepka expected that, and in return Schink sees the doors open and says, okay, don't mind if I do, as he moves up into P6 overall. As they head down the brakes here and into turn number 3, now he's going to close up behind the Honda Elantra double pair of what is Hendricks chasing Lauzon and Wally, and of course Wally they're still proven to be the immovable object versus the unstoppable force of John Lauzon. And can Micah Hendricks perhaps find an answer to that ever old proverb as he makes his way down towards turn number 7? Well, if he can, it's going to be a very impressive if he's able to do so, as I stumble over my own words there, given the fact with 10 minutes to go, there is no sign of Jacob Wally taking the cork out of the bottle anytime soon and letting these Alpha drivers on through as they make the way into the hairpin. Now coming on down and rolling through the right-hander with the time remaining, we do look to Eric Stats here, who's chasing after Wiley Cox as they make the way for the left into right, and coming on down through the long right of turn number 7, the 789 driver here trying to be at one of the stronger Hondas in class. Of course right now Wiley Cox your highest placed Honda in the Delta class, so really a bit of a battle of the Honda drivers as they make the way through the turn 8 hairpin. But coming on through they do have Connor Achetera here now back out on circuit, who's trying to recover some points out of this race after what has been a very difficult run so far, as they make the way up the hill after running at the front of the field for so long. It's all unfolded in disaster, and he won't want it to be a full disaster all the way through to the end. But as they make the way up towards turn number 11, we do look back to Wally here, who's got the pressure from McKenzie coming on through. It's not McKenzie, I should say. He's got the pressure to chase after McKenzie, but in return he's got Lauzon and Hendricks, who are much too close for comfort as they come into turn number 16. but coming on through as Świrydowicz takes the fastest lap of the race with 206.82, or an 819 to be a bit more specific. Logan McKenzie sets his personal best of 207.289. John Lauzon sets his personal best of 207.796. And Wally here defending as hard as he can. Lauzon looking around the outside here, and Wally being forced to defend early this time. It's the first time that Lauzon's been able to make this happen. He's going to carry all the speed here and all the space. I think Wally confined himself so much as they make the way into two. Goes to turn in. Lauzon is there, and Lauzon finds a way to unblock what is Wally's car as they make the way down to three. Wally takes a look back to the inside, hot on the brakes, and Lauzon goes round with contact there. And will Jacob Wally coming in a bit too hot for the brakes, and as a result, as they make the way back up to speed, Micah Hendricks now, well, he just sails up through past the two of them. That time he didn't have to do too much other than be at the right place at the right time to seize on the instant. But as they make the way through turn 6 into 7, Francois Schinck behind now look at this and think, right, it's on for a podium finish. But as they make the way down through 7 and up towards 8, Jacob Wally behind them, and then we have Matt Shepka, who's got ahead of John Lauzon as they make the way in towards turn number 8. But Lauzon not too pleased with that, with a flash of lights as we saw as he rejoined the circuit, as he heads down to the braking zone for the right-hander of the hairpin. Now I think it'll be Lauzon who'll be looking to try and fight his way on through past Shepka. Made his way past Shepka earlier. That was not easy by any stretch of the imagination, and now he's got to do it all again, and Shepka will know this time Lauzon will be sporting some damage on that Elantra, and therefore that may cost him a bit of straight line speed advantage. But meanwhile, Achitella here going round the inside of what is their Statzer in the run to turn number 8, and Statzer not fighting it too hard, as Statzer has also found his way past Wiley Cox in the battle for P13 overall P5 in the Delta class. But as they head on up the hill, I think Achitella now will gradually break away, as meanwhile they make the way up the hill, and we look to James Carr at the back of the field, who's had to make his way into the pit lane here. And I wonder if this is not for a penalty, is there some damage on the car that we don't know about, as he makes his way on in. Meanwhile, as he comes on in, we look to your race leader here, who comes on through with 6.5 minutes still remaining, and Świrydowicz sets the timing screens on fire with another fastest lap of the race, a 206.59. The man is possessed to go faster and faster, and who can blame him, as John Lauzon into the pit lane, we believe. In fact, it may be what is a retirement for John Lauzon. We're trying to understand what exactly has happened, but he's falling down the order and listed as out. It may be a premature retirement for John Lauzon, and that may be due to the damage picked up on the previous lap, which if so is highly unfortunate for the B-Buzz Energy driver. And McKenzie right now in P2, which is going to be a bit of a lonely P2 given the pace that Świrydowicz has shown, which is a whole second a lap faster on average at the moment, but still a P2 that's well deserved all the same here, as meanwhile Hendricks will having to try and hold on to this P3 all the way to the finish. Now, fortunately for him, perhaps finding a little bit of favour in the fact it's a Veloster behind rather than a Hyundai Elantra, which means that he will not have as much of a straight line speed deficit by comparison. But still, you can see there how Schinck is keeping him as honest as possible as they make the way down through turn number 7, and we ride on board here with the Veloster driver. Now powering his way on out for B-Buzz Energy, and heading up towards turn number 8. 4 tenths between the two of them at this point in time, as they get ready to go onto the brakes here. Anything can happen, of course, as they roll the way on through. Schinck taking a much tighter line, meanwhile Hendricks letting the car roll a little bit deeper there, and as they make the way on out, nothing between them in terms of their approaches, as they now make the way up the hill towards 11. As they come on through, we do also have a little bit of battle building for P2 in what is the Delta class, and that's in the battle for P7, and this is between Justin Rhodes and Daniel Sedino as they come up towards the Schumacher S, making the way on through. The left into right here, and Rhodes, well, after getting clear of that, Sedino has fallen back towards him with quite a difficult last lap, which was 2 tenths slower by comparison with Sedino's lap. A 209.02 for Rhodes versus a 208.84 for what is Sedino, and I wonder whether Rhodes has pushed it a little bit too far on the tyres, and where he's now feeling the pain as a result of it. As they make the way on through, we see that up the inside it goes. Connor Achitella versus Mark Darnell to move back inside the overall top 10 as he makes his way on down through turn number 12, going out of the Bilstein curve, and as they make the way on towards Vidal, will Eric Statzer also staying quite close right now as Darnell looking to try and hold off Eric Statzer there and give himself a big points haul today. But as they make the way in towards the Vidal chicane right now, it's not going to be close enough for Statzer here. A whole second is the difference, but as they make the way on through Darnell, they're losing 3 tenths in the run through the one corner corner sequence. And, well, I think stats are really coming alive now as time is wearing down. Of course, the Honda very strong with regards to its tyre preservation in these 30 minutes races versus what is the Elantra. The Veloster is somewhere in between, and as they make the way onwards towards turn number 1, 4 minutes and counting, and as stats have got enough here with what will be expected to be another 2 laps chalked up in time. Well, we'll have to wait and find out, as it does look as though he's close enough under braking. And then again, Darnell getting good exits out the corners and keeping himself safe for the time being. As meanwhile, we look back to Hendricks here as we ride on board with the Hassholz Motorsports driver in the Lego livery machine. Well, right now, you can see there how close Shink is, and looking to do everything he can to get the move on done here in the run down towards turn number 8, but not close enough now to potentially look for it as they get ready to go back on the brakes once more. While he's just behind there in P5, albeit with a bit of damage to his car after the contact with John Lauzon. You'll imagine now he might be just nursing the car all the way to the finish and not looking to try and make any more ground as they head into the Schumacher S. I think there might be a few post-race stewarding incidents to be looked at as well over the course of the 3 races today, but there's never a race without incident, of course, and that's why we do have our professional stewards available to take a look at the incidents. But right now, focusing on the here and now, Hendricks doing everything he can to bring on home that spot on the podium after what has been 2 difficult races, 2 difficult heats, but in the feature he really does seem to have settled into the world of the Honda Series tyre part, and it's really now starting to pull the miles as they make the way up towards Vito once again. Then the charge and down, we do look to Eric Statz here, who continues to chase after Mark Darnell. The gap between these two now 3 tenths as they get ready to head into 11 and making their way left, right they go. Through 11 into Bilstein at 12, and you can see Statzer is close here, and I think he does have the speed in the corners, but where the average speed of the lap is opening up and increasing on the second half of the lap, that is where Statzer does lose out. You can see Darnell there just comfortable to be able to plough on in the Elantra. That's that top speed differential we keep referring to, where the Elantra just has so much to give on the straight, and the Honda just does not have enough, even in the toe there. It gains little by little, but only by a tenth in a whole run from Bilstein to Vito, and as they make the way into 16, Statzer really has to try and get in the head of Darnell, but Darnell right now showing no signs of reacting there to Statzer putting his nose on the inside into 16 from far back as they make the way onto another lap. Now our race leader at the moment is at turn number 6, so we will have 2 more laps. In fact, we will get, as they make the way into lap number 14, we will get what is a 15th lap here today in the feature, so we will have an extended run of racing. And for Statzer right now, can he use those 2 remaining laps to come on through versus Darnell, or has Darnell got enough in the tank to keep him at bay for P4 in the Delta class, or P11 overall, as they make the way into the latter half of the arena? Well, I think if Darnell can continue to hook up the latter half of the lap, particularly the run out of the Dunlop Curve hairpin and then also through what is Bilstein, I think he will be safe. And these are the corners where he's worried. You can see there, bringing the car across, hoping and really relying on the straight line speed of the Elantra just to give him the edge into turn 6. It's difficult to overtake on the inside of 6. You really do need to be fully alongside. Coming from behind or even with a tiny overlap does not really work there, given the way the road surface cambers and tapers in towards the apex curve. And normally if you see a driver attack with less than 25% coverage of the car, it normally does end up in a major incident as they make the way down to turn number 8. Again, Stats are really trying to find that space on the inside. He's trying to get Darnell to just keep an eye on his mirror, and then Sonny Rapp by going, Stats is going to come into the side of me unless I keep it wide. But of course Stats has never planned to make the contact. He's just trying to intimidate as they make the way for the Schumacher S again. As they head on up, we look to a bit further up the field, and it's a battle between the Civic tyre part of Hendricks and the Veloster of what is Francois Schink as they make the way into the final corner. This will be for the penultimate time as our race leader has already gone to the final lap, and Świrydowicz is already down towards turn number 1. And as they make the way around, the clock strikes 30 minutes. But can it be that Hendricks holds off what is Schink to the line next time around, or will Schink find some magic right at the end? The same for Rhodes versus Daniel Sedino here. Rhodes has started to fall off the base over the last 5 to 6 laps, but can Daniel Sedino find a way on through, given the gap has stabilised at 5 tenths all the way over the last 2 or 3 laps? Has he got anything else left in the tank? And as they head across the timeline, of course, then we do have Eric Statzer right now doing everything to try and hunt down Darnell, who swings to the inside and weaves his way back onto the racing line. He gets one weave, no more than that, of course, as otherwise it does become dangerous. And as they make their way down towards one, Darnell knowing he needs to nail that gap before he heads into the complex in the Mercedes arena, for the simple reason this is Honda territory. This is where Statzer absolutely brings that gap in, but the gap standing at 8 tenths. They make the way through turn number 2. Is it too late in the day for Statzer here? I think he's going to really need to pull out a huge amount of time through the finish. You see him drifting under, breaking down. I think Statzer may have just lost the time that he needed to gain as the gap opens up to 1.1 seconds. I think Darnell, barring any mistakes now, Darnell may be safe for P4 in the Delta class. But meanwhile, Jerome Bajulas is off. Oh, goodness me, what on earth has happened here right at the end? Well, Jerome Bajulas and Connor Achatella have been involved in an instant between one another. Achatella in the gravel there on the exit of 6, and Jerome Bajulas limping back onto the racing line now with everybody clear. But for Achatella and Bajulas, it has not gone well at all, and as they try to bring it on home now, they'll lose overall positions. But meanwhile, speaking of drives not losing, well, right now, he's not dropped a single lap in terms of mistakes, and he's not going to lose the opportunity to seize a triplet of wins. He comes through the final corner, and he'll be your triple winner for today. Overall, it's Wojciech Świrydowicz who crosses the line, 8 seconds clear of the field in the privateer machine. That switch to the Elantra paying off by the dividend, and it'll be Logan McKenzie who finishes P2 in the end, finishing with his best lap of the race at 207.067, and then Micah Hendricks will come on through just to beat Francois Schinck to the line for the final spot in the overall and Alpha podium. Schinck P4 behind Hendricks, and it'll be Jacob Wally who makes it another win in the Delta class there. P5 overall in brilliant defensive driving from himself for the most part. And then Matt Shepka P6, Justin Rhodes P7 there, P2 in the Delta class ahead of Daniel Sedino at the end. It was so close between them to the line. And then Mark Darnell will hold off Eric Statzer to bring on home P9 overall, P4 in class ahead of his fellow Delta counterpart there who completes the top 10. And then Jerome Bajulas limps on home, best of the rest in P11 ahead of Wiley Cox in P12, who in the end was not able to quite hold off Kurt Smith. In fact, going slight line, I think he's run out of fuel right at line, otherwise he would have held off Kurt Smith. And in the end, Kurt Smith coming on through. It does seem as though we've run slightly out of VHS tape here, as we like to say, with regards to the replay. But in the end, Kurt Klein won P14 at the line. And then we did have the 4 retirements of Connor Achatella, and what was John Lauzon, James Carr and David Bauer. But what a fantastic race from start to finish, ladies and gentlemen. And let's just take you through those full results once again for the sprint feature. As the results come up on the screen, and now we can see the confirmation there in the end. Wojciech Świrydowicz taking the win by just shy of 8.1 seconds over Logan McKenzie, and Świrydowicz looking unstoppable. And now, as the rounds are ticking down on the schedule, you would imagine that Świrydowicz can keep up this run of form. Well, can anybody stop him in terms of opening up in the championship lead before the season finale? Logan McKenzie for Yellow Flag Motorsports, they're doing everything he can and bringing home a P2 in the end ahead of Micah Hendricks, who wrapped up the overall and the Alpha podium there for Hassel's Motorsports in some brilliant and rather divine driving in terms of finding his way through the field from the back of the field. Francois Schinck P4, not his day-to-day to be on the podium in the feature, but still a valiant effort for Beaver Buzz Energy ahead of your Delta winner of Jacob Wally there, P5 for breakfast for dinner. And well, next time, of course, he'll be looking to continue that run of form for the simple reason that Justin Rhodes was only 2 places behind, and therefore it does cancel out the amount of points that both drivers have gained today, with Matt Shepka there, P6 for Torque Steer Racing ahead of Justin Rhodes, P7, Delta second place, and then behind the breakfast for dinner driver, Hassel's Motorsports, is Daniel Sedino, who completes the Delta podium there in P8. Mark Darnell and Eric Statz are the 2 privateers, P9, P10, there to complete the top 10, also the run of the top 5 in the Delta class. And then Jerome Bajulas, best of the rest there, the Alpha driver for Beaver Buzz Energy, P11, with that last lap instant with Connor Achatella. Kurt Smith P12, Connor Achatella P13, albeit I do believe in fact it was Wiley Cox P13, and those results are not quite accurate given the fact we run out of replay time, so it would have been Wiley Cox P13 and then Connor Achatella P14, with the then Kirk Lane at P15 and the retirements of John Lauzon, James Carr and David Bauer. In fact, Achatella was behind Kirk Lane, let's get that corrected, and it was in the end Achatella finishing what was P15 behind Lane in P14. But a fantastic race from start to finish, and well, brilliant racing action over the course of the 3 rounds. But I hear you ask, so how does this affect the championship standings come the end of round number 8? Well, in fact, let's find out. So after 8 rounds of 13 in the AlphaTauri Challenge Season 6 has brought to you on iRacing, Wojciech Świrydowicz now takes an increased lead of what is 396 points to 362 for Micah Hendricks. The advantage now spanning and standing at 34 points. He has essentially doubled his advantage, but still he's got a way to go, given that Hendricks is still holding on to P2 there with an advantage of 15 points over Logan McKenzie. James Carr only a further 7 points off, and then Franz Washington now falling to 24 points behind the top 4, but we are seeing this top 5 still close together, albeit the overall range between P1 and P5 now expanding up to 80 points, and therefore for Świrydowicz he's really setting the pace of the field and the changes on everybody else to try and follow them through. Conor Achter there in P6 on 240 points, but look who's moved up to P7 behind the driver there, and that is Justin Rhodes for breakfast for dinner, who right now, your Delta Championship leader, continues to nestle himself nicely into the top 10 overall on 234 points, only ahead of fellow teammate of David Bauer in the Alpha class based on result countback. Robert Abrams in P9 there, and then Matthew Shepka in at P10 to complete the run of the top 10. And it's interesting to see how Shepka there, 4 points off for Abrams, keeping the pressure on, and David Bauer and Justin Rhodes only a further 10 points away, and Achter further 6 up. It does mean that there is a 5-way battle for P6 currently, and it does feel as though this top 10 is splitting into 2 halves, equal halves, so that P1 through to P5 battling for the championship lead, and it's the battle to be P6 in the championship, going to the wire it would seem. Then we make our way outside the top 10 here, and best of the rest in P11 is Jerome Bajulis there on 201 points, a little bit off of the top 10, but of course a difficult day today does not represent how he can potentially bounce back, with Kurt Smith there in P12, jumping ahead of what is Eric Statzer in the last round and holding over that advantage now to 20 points over Statzer. And then we have Jacob Wally, who has closed up there onto the back of the 2 Delta drivers, now only what is 11 points off of Statzer, and next round he could have the opportunity to move himself into P3 in the class should the results go his way. John Lauzon in P15 and 117 points, and that bad luck from the last couple of rounds continues with the instance today, with Daniel Sedino, Adrian Fedorowski, James Logston, Kirk Lane and Gus Blondell completing the run of the top 20, and Kirk Lane moves into P19, only behind James Logston based on result countback after his good performances today. And then we come on to outside the top 20, 21st through to 30th, and we see Dom Savio there on 74 points, only 4 points clear of Mark Darnell, who really gave it a good go today and picked up some valuable points. And then Jason Landry, P23 ahead of Charlie Pouillet and Michael Cochran. And then we do have outside the run of the top 25 in P26, Mark Senegal, ahead of Daniel Smith, Samuel Cran, Joseph Oetzel and Wiley Cox, with Cox moving up to P30 there, behind Oetzel based on result countback currently. And then from 31st through to 40th, we have the run of Tyler Montanes, Spencer Cockayne, Sismon Bajuk, Aaron Hall, John Hinman, Alex Kotlowski, Tony Roma, Mark Crawford, Benjamin Harris and Michael Zepp. None of these drivers in attendance today. And then we come to 41st through to 47th. And again, all of these drivers not in attendance today. And it's Ian Maddox ahead of James Vance, Gurkan Demir, Ryan Winfeld, John Lynch, Stefan Chalafu and Michael McLeod to complete your 47 driver standing. But now coming on to the team's championship standings, we can see here at the top it is Breakfast for Dinner, who continue to hold sway with 887 points. The Yellow Flag Motorsports is 763 points, but what is starting to become noticeable now, we previously talked about how Hassholes Motorsports and Beaver Buzz Energy were really trying to stay with the top 2 and keeping it a 4-way fight for the championship, but with the way the results have gone today, now Breakfast for Dinner and Yellow Flag Motorsports seem to be starting to creep away a little bit more, and now the pressure is on Hassholes Motorsports to potentially get close enough to make it a 3-way fight once again, because otherwise, if Beaver Buzz are able to get major points over Hassholes next time out, then we could see that fight for P3 really intense fight and start to focus more on itself rather than chasing after the top 2. Talk Steer Race there in P5 and 392 points, falling a little bit of a Beaver Buzz Energy, but still staying in the hunt to try and move a bit further up from inside the top 5. And then QZ Motorsports in P6, who we didn't see in attendance today. We have Not Lost Motorsports there in P7. And then at back of the pack, Racing in P8. I think there might be a little bit of an error with regards to the numbers there, but that's how they currently stand going into the next round. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. And if you have enjoyed today and you want to know more about the AlphaTauri Challenge Championship, the ATC Championship and the community in terms of the series we run and everything else in between, then why not first head to our official website. That's alphatouringchallenge.wordpress.com, where you can find out all the latest news and information regarding the series. Or if you don't want to look on the website and you want to go straight to the heart of the community, well, there's the invite link available on the screen there for the official ATC Discord, where you can talk to the admins, you can talk to the drivers, see all the latest photos, get all the insight down in the paddock and everything else there that goes on. Indeed, a very friendly community. I can definitely tell you that from first-hand experience. Lovely membership, and indeed, always looking to have more members on the grid. But now, speaking of the grid will be making its way from Germany to what will be Brazil for the Autodromo Jose Carlos Pache for round number 9, and that will, of course, be on Friday, the 27th of January, that we bring it to you as a post-round broadcast. The race itself will take place as what will be Monday, the 23rd of January, and there, being round 9 and another alpha round, the pressure continues to intensify with regards to rounds running out, drop scores coming into a major effect, and who will be able to bring home the results. We reckon it's Wojciech Świrydowicz who is the favourite right now to take the championship, given the pace he's demonstrated today. But the thing about Interlagos, of course, is it's the one circuit where you can count on anything that happens over the course of the Sao Paulo region, and who will be able to steer clear of the drama and bring home the winning result. Find out in a week's time, but until then, we have been the Alpha Touring Change. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, have an absolutely fantastic weekend, ladies and gentlemen. And most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.